Loughborough University London is the postgraduate-focused campus of Loughborough University, located in the Olympic Park in North East London. Most master's programmes in UK universities take place within a single discipline or single subject area school. In Loughborough London, there are multiple subject areas being taught, and this creates major advantages for students. There are many benefits of studying at Loughborough University London, but perhaps the most obvious distinctive feature of our offer is the way in which it's enhanced the employability of our students.
This university helped us connect with local firms. I did the digital skill program, I worked with a startup, I got meetings with them, I learned a lot. Internship work experience is really important. And all these opportunities, it's because we connect, we communicate with the university.
Sport and Loughborough go hand in hand. The fact that we are located in the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park just gives us access to so many different sporting venues. We have the football stadium where West Ham play, we have the velodrome, we have the Lee Valley Hockey Tennis Centre. We are located in such a way that we can access anything we want. As an international student, I just think it's changed my way of looking at academics. All my projects, all my modules have been industry-led. If you look at the future space team, I wouldn't have been able to do my dissertation with Formula E or a motorsport company if it wasn't for you all.
We got a lot of international students, people from different background and nationality. We got different thoughts and ideas. We got a really close community. I think every international student would enjoy their experience over here.
Loughborough University London is the postgraduate-focused campus of Loughborough University, located in the Olympic Park in North East London. Most master's programmes in UK universities take place within a single discipline or single subject area school. In Loughborough London, there are multiple subject areas being taught, and this creates major advantages for students. There are many benefits of studying at Loughborough University London, but perhaps the most obvious distinctive feature of our offer is the way in which it's enhanced the employability of our students.
This university helped us connect with local firms. I did the digital skill program, I worked with a startup, I got meetings with them, I learned a lot. Internship work experience is really important. And all these opportunities, it's because we connect, we communicate with the university.
Sport and Loughborough go hand in hand. The fact that we are located in the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park just gives us access to so many different sporting venues. We have the football stadium where West Ham play, we have the velodrome, we have the Lee Valley Hockey Tennis Centre. We are located in such a way that we can access anything we want. As an international student, I just think it's changed my way of looking at academics. All my projects, all my modules have been industry-led. If you look at the future space team, I wouldn't have been able to do my dissertation with Formula E or a motorsport company if it wasn't for you all.
We got a lot of international students, people from different background and nationality. We got different thoughts and ideas. We got a really close community. I think every international student would enjoy their experience over here.
Indo dilaksanakan di 4 lokasi. Selamat datang di Universitas Respati Indonesia, Universitas Entrepreneur dan Ramah Lansia. Universitas Respati Indonesia atau URINDO didirikan tahun 1986 di bawah naungan Yayasan Pendidikan Respati. Di era 4.0 ini, dengan penerapan teknologi informasi, mampu bersaing secara global dengan keunggulan kewirausahaan dan gerontologi. Saat ini, Urindo telah terakreditasi dengan peringkat akreditasi B. Perkuliahan Urindo dilaksanakan di 4 lokasi, yaitu Kampus A, Kampus B, Kampus C yang terletak di wilayah Jakarta Timur, dan salah satu ruangan di Menara MTH di Jakarta Selatan. Moto Universitas Entrepreneur dan Ramah Lansia sejalan dengan visi Urindo, yaitu menjadi Universitas Entrepreneur dan Ramah Lansia yang diakui secara internasional pada tahun 2033. Dan ditunjang dengan misinya untuk mencapai visi tersebut dengan menitikberatkan pada kewirausahaan dan kelanjutusiaan pada kegiatan Tridharma perguruan tinggi dengan tetap menyelenggarakan universitas dengan tata kelola yang berkualitas dan berkesinambungan atau Good University Governance. Sebagai Universitas Entrepreneur, Urindo telah memasukkan mata ajar kewirausahaan di semua program studi, memiliki pusat kajian Centralized Entrepreneurial and Business Initiatives atau CEBI, dan inkubator bisnis yang mendukung UMKM dan bekerjasama dengan Bursa Efek. Beberapa webinar kewirausahaan diselenggarakan untuk menjadikan setiap kegiatan Urindo sejalan dengan visinya. Dalam mewujudkan Universitas Ramah Lansia, Urindo memasukkan gerontologi di semua program studi, memiliki pusat kajian Center for Family Aging Studies atau CEFAS, dan sekolah lansia. Memasukkan gerontologi ke dalam mata ajar di semua program studi adalah untuk menjawab tantangan yang tercantum dalam Perpres nomor 88 tahun 2021 tentang stranas kelanjutusiaan menguatkan persiapan menghadapi aging population. Beberapa webinar baik nasional maupun internasional yang berkaitan dengan kelanjutusiaan diselenggarakan untuk mewujudkan visinya. Dan pada webinar internasional yang dilaksanakan sampai dengan 5 seri, menghasilkan deklarasi Age Friendly University sebagai acuan untuk bidang kelanjut usiaan. Urindo memiliki 13 program studi. Dengan semua program studi telah memasukkan mata ajar tentang kewirausahaan dan gerontologi. Ke-13 program studi tersebut dinaungi oleh 5 fakultas. Yang pertama, kita akan mengenal Fakultas Ilmu Kesehatan atau FIKES. Ada 5 program studi yang dapat dipilih dalam fakultas ini, yaitu S1 Kesehatan Masyarakat, S1 Keperawatan, Profesi Nurse, D3 Kebidanan, dan Kebidanan Program Sarjana Terapan. Program studi S1 Kesehatan Masyarakat memiliki keunggulan promosi kesehatan lansia dan berjiwa kewirausahaan. Lulusan prodi ini diharapkan mampu melakukan kajian kesehatan masyarakat dan membuat perencanaan pelayanan kesehatan di komunitas secara paripurna dengan pendekatan siklus hidup. Lulusan program studi S1 Keperawatan dan Profesi Nurse akan memiliki kompetensi di bidang perawatan termasuk gerontic nursing atau keperawatan gerontik yang berjiwa kewirausahaan dan memanfaatkan teknologi. Program studi kebidanan program sarjana terapan dan D3 kebidanan memiliki keunggulan konseling menyusui berbasis keluarga dan pemberian makan bayi dan anak atau PMBA. Fakultas
Attention to all participants, the generator is about to begin. The team in charge will mute the system to avoid disturbing sounds, which will be reactivated in discussion session. Thank you for your understanding. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to each and every one of you to this remarkable event centered around the theme of dementia, prevention from childhood to old age. It is with great pleasure that I stand before you today as your master of ceremonies, guiding us through a day filled with discussion, presentation, and interaction. Before we proceed the program, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to the Honorable Chairman of the Respati Education Foundation, Rector of Universitas Respati Indonesia, Rector of Universitas Respati Yogyakarta, Chairman of Stikes Respati, and also the Honorable our lecturer today, Prof. Yves Hugo Vos, Professor of Biological Psychology, Loughborough University, UK, Prof. Barry Bogin, Emeritus Professor of Biological Anthropology, Loughborough University, UK, our Chairperson of the committee, Dr. Ani Nuraini, MM, and last but not least, our Honorable Moderator of this event, Mrs. Desti Elvira Puspaningtyas, SKZ MPH, Head of Research Community Service and Scientific Publication, Universitas Respati Yogyakarta. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining our general lecture today with the theme of dementia prevention from childhood to old age. Before we commence this remarkable event, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the attendees, the organizing committee, and the incredible team of individuals who have worked tirelessly behind the scene to make this lecture possible. Ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right into this general lecture with infectious enthusiasm. We would like to invite Dr. Ani Nuraini, MM, Chairperson of the committee, to deliver her report of this event. Please, time is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Tia. For all my honorable Chairperson of the Foundation's Daily Management Board, Mrs. Tiwi Nurhastuti SAMCom, Rector of Respati Indonesia University, Profesor Dr. Tribudi Wiraharjo, MS, Rector of Respati Yogyakarta University, Profesor Dr. Santoso, represented by Bapak Sianto, Head of Stikes Respati of Tasikmalaya, Dr. Lilis Lisnawati, Professor at Loughborough University, UK, Professor Yves Hugo Vos, Emeritus Professor of Biological Anthropology at Loughborough University, UK, Prof. Barry Bogin, Head of Research Community Service and Scientific Publication, UNRIO, Mrs. Desti Elvira Puspaningtyas, SJZ, MPH. The Deans, Directors, Heads of Study Programs, Heads of Service Units, Heads of Institutions, Lecturers, Students, and all participants, both present in this room and via Zoom. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Best wishes to all of us. Praise and gratitude we pray to the presence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, God who always give love, mercy, and guidance, and all the gifts we have received, so that today we are allowed to be in this room in a good health. Welcome Prof. Yves Hugo Vos and Prof. Barry Bogin from Loughborough University, UK, as a guest speaker who will give a general lecture at Urindo this morning with the theme Dementia Prevention from Childhood to Old Age. Next, I would also like to welcome Mrs. Desti Elvira Puspaningtyas, SKZ, MPH from UNRIO, who will be the moderator of this event, and all enthusiastic participants. Ladies and gentlemen, This general lecture is motivated by the dementia prevalence tends to increase to the growing of older people population worldwide, including in Indonesia. There are currently 1.5 million people with dementia in Indonesia, a very large number which is expected to increase by around 5 million in 2050. Studies have been found on dementia in Indonesia and the UK, which appear to be similar, namely with early signs of dementia such as cognitive decline, which can be avoided through a healthy lifestyle with a life cycle approach. Healthy lifestyle strategies with a lifestyle approach can be applied in families and communities and must be understood by the academic community. Therefore, lectures on dementia prevention from childhood and old age are very important. Based on this, Respati Indonesia University, Respati Yogyakarta University, and Respati Tasikmalaya College of Health held a general lecture in collaboration with Lohborough University in order to promote dementia prevention with a life cycle and multidisciplinary approach, especially from biological, psychological, and biological anthropological aspects. Next, I want to report that the participants consist of lecturers, students, and general participants, totaling approximately 300 both offline and online. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we from Respati Indonesia University, Urindo, namely entrepreneur and age-friendly university, are very grateful for all the participants. I hope this event runs smoothly and have a good time attending general lectures. Finally, on behalf of the community, I apologize if there are any shortcomings. That's all the report I can submit. Thank you. Thank you to all for committees. May I submit pantun or poetry? Please say cakep. Okay. Please say cakep if I say pantun or poetry. I saw a big eagle. Cakep. So I took a picture. Cakep. General lecture is a struggle. Cakep. To achieve the future. Cakep. Akhirul kalam bibali hatarik wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Ani Nuraini, for your report. Now, it is my deep pleasure to invite Professor Dr. Tribudi Wahyuni Raharjo, our Rector of Universitas Respati Indonesia, to deliver her opening remarks. Please, the time is yours.
Thank you, Tika. Thank you, the chairperson of this general lecture. Give big applause to Dr. Ani Nuraini, and also with the pantun and the poetry. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we would like to praise the Lord because of the blessing. We conduct the general lecture this morning, with the title Dementia Prevention from Childhood to Old Age. This general lecture is collaboration between Lohborough University with University of Respati Indonesia, University of Respati Yogyakarta, and Stikes Tasikmalaya. My honorable and my beloved friend, Professor Irku Herfos from Lohborough University, my beloved friend also, and the same age with me, Professor Ferry Boken from Lohborough University. Thank you for never-ending collaboration with us. And today, actually, has been already 20 years with you. and 10 years with you. I think this quite clear that mentioned by the chairperson, what is the background of this general lecture, and also what is the purpose of general lecture. My honorable, beloved chairperson of Respati Education Foundation, I hope he also will ask by Zoom, and also the steering person of the committee of Respati Education Foundation, Ms. Tiwi Nurhastuti, and I agree that he is also with us. Professor Dr. Santoso, as the rector of Universitas Respati Yogyakarta, and will be representing by Dr. Stianto, and also Dr. Lilis Isnawati, the chairperson of Stikes Tasikmalaya. Thank you very much. Because this general lecture is the second general lecture this year, why we have to collaborate among Loughborough University with all of us under the Respati Education Foundation, because we agree that three institutions and the foundation should move forward for the development. I also would like to greet my beloved friend, Miss Rudia. Give applause to her. She's also our best friend and collaborator for research with Professor Ihu Hafos. And I think she has some data for the development and for the writing. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to say that with collaboration, that very kind collaboration, we have published around 100 articles. Please give applause to her. And also, we will improve our collaboration with Professor Boge with Guatemala University. So you promise that you take me there, right? Yeah. Okay. And also, I'm also very happy because our deans come here. Dr. Sainal Abidin is the Dean of Faculty of Health Sciences. Thank you. He's also the same age with us. We are only 3 older people here in this class. And Dr. Ati Ridawati, the chairperson of postgraduate program. And I think there's so many participants and also the leaders of the University of Respati Indonesia, the leaders of the Respati Jakarta University, and also Stikes Tasikmalaya. And last but not least, let me give high appreciation to the moderator, Esti Elvira Puspaningtyas from University of Yogyakarta. Give applause. Compared to my English, her English is much better. And also thank you for the husband, very nice husband, accompanying you. Thank you. And all the community, academic community from Urindo, Unrio, and Stikes. It means that all the students and the lecturers, and also I hope that some of alumni. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this general lecture will be beneficial for all of us. This is the third session of the program with Loughborough University. The first one is community service that has been very, very successful. And the second is international webinar, is also very, very successful. And almost our participants very appreciate us, and some of them would like to continue our collaboration. because at that time, it's very inspiring. Wealthy aging is not just in terms of economic, but very comprehensive. And Professor Bogerpost has also created that kind of, what do you call it, the strategy, the very comprehensive strategy, and then it will be adopted by Asia Pacific Consortium of Active Aging that will use that kind of concept to evaluate the wealthy aging in Asia Pacific. Give applause to her. And I ask the president of ACAP will support us, and I have to appreciate Professor Takeo Glawa to lead us in that kind of program. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to say that we can do something like that, not because of me, but this is because of the creativity and the willingness, and also, in my opinion, the support and from all the young generation in Urindo, Unrio, and Stakers. Because actually nowadays the young generation should be replace our responsibility. And I'm happy because they do that. They do that. I hope that this session is the last session in this year about the older people issues, but I hope that all of you young generation in 3 institutions follow that kind of great successful, very great successful in my opinion. And I believe that young generation in 3 institutions will continue. I hope that the collaboration will be signed up, and hopefully or be later on will be also signed up by the Unrio, and Stakers. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's enough. Something that a message from me, and I'm also very happy that some of the participants will join us. Thank you again for the committee that very what do you call it? It's very dedicated in doing everything for preparation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for following the general lecture, and with the blessing of God, the general lecture is officially open. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Tribudi, for your warm remarks. Now, I respectfully invite the Vice Rector of Non-Academy of Universitas Respati Yogyakarta, Dr. Setianto DEA, to deliver welcome remarks. Please, Dr. Setianto, the time is yours.
Thank you. Hello, test. You can hear. Halo. Halo.
Dr. Seti, suaranya belum terdengar.
Waduh, saya sudah on-kan semua, gimana ya? Tes, halo. Tes.
Sudah terdengar, Pak. Silakan.
Oke, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My God always with us. Distinguished our special lecturer from Loughborough University, United Kingdom, Professor Ed Hodgerford and Professor Barry Bojin. Distinguished our leader, Prof. Tribudi Raharja, Rector of Respati Indonesia University. Our best friend, Dr. Lilis Lisnawati, Chairman of Respati Health Institute, Stikes Tasikmalaya. And Ms. Tiwi Nurhastuti, representative of the Respati Education Foundation, and all of participants of this general lecture. I would like to introduce myself, especially for 2-hour lecture, because I never met before. My name is Setianto from Respati, Yogyakarta University. Firstly, on behalf of Respati Yogyakarta University, I would like to express our thanks to steering committee of this collaboration on general lecture, and especially to Professor Tribudi Raharjo as the leader of this event. This is an implementation of collaboration between us in Respati education community. Secondly, for our guest lecturer from UK, welcome again to Indonesia, and thank you for your presence on Respati Group University. According to the topic proposed above, I know that you are expert on the dementia prevention. Thank you for sharing knowledge with us this morning. Indonesia is one of the biggest population in the world. It means that probability of dementia will also become more and more the problem in our country. This prevention of dementia is important to reduce the dementia problem in the near future. We really need more knowledge and on dementia problem. This general lecture is one of the transfer knowledge from expert to us. So I hope all participants can use this opportunity to gain your knowledge from the expert. Finally, for all participants, I hope you enjoy discussion. Enjoy to learn from the lecture. And I hope to, in the near future, Respati Group can become leaders on dementia prevention in Indonesia. Good luck. Thank you very much for all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Stianto, for welcome remark. Next, I will invite Dr. Lilis Lisnawati, Chairman of Stikes Respati, to deliver welcome remark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning,
Time is
everybody.
yours.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi an'amana bi ni'matil iman wa islam wa nusalli wa nusallim ala khairil anam sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain amma ba'd. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful, may peace, mercy, and blessing of Allah be upon you. Dear Mrs. Tiwi Rastuti, SAMCOM, as the steering person of the Committee Respati Education Foundation, the College Rector of Urindo, and UNRIO, lecturers, researchers, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Respati, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and welcome you to General Lecture. Moreover, I honorably welcome our keynote and invite speaker, Prof. Ip and Prof. Berry from Loughborough University. First, I thank each of our speakers for taking part in this event. The quality and caliber of speaker this event is outstanding. I also want to thank all participants for coming, and I hope you are looking forward to the discussion as much as I am. Interesting topic about dementia prevention from childhood to old age. We know that dementia is not a normal part of aging. Dementia is caused by various types of disease. Although getting older is the biggest risk factor for dementia, even so, there are things you can do to help reduce your own risk. This includes keeping active, eating healthily, and exercising your mind. This is not a way to prevent all types of dementia, as researchers are still investigating how the condition develop. However, there's good evidence that a healthy lifestyle can help reduce your risk of developing dementia when you are older. A healthy lifestyle can also help prevent cardiovascular disease, such as stroke and heart attacks, which are themselves risk factors for Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, the two most common types of dementia. But how to prevent dementia from childhood? I think the topic is interesting to be learned. Hope we can match information and discussion. Last but not least, the committee has organized a dynamic scientific program and is working hard to make it happen, bringing in highly respected and internationally renowned speaker to lead it. I wish you are very productive with discussion and exchange of knowledge that is exciting and encouraging so that we can all be together. We can anticipate the future with knowledge, research, and innovative about how dementia prevention from childhood to old age. My God bless us all with good health so this event is successful, which are fun. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lilis Lisnawati, for your welcome remarks. Move on to the next greeting. Now I respectfully invite the steering person of the committee, Respati Education Foundation, Mrs. Tiwi Nurhastuti, SAMCOM, to deliver welcome remarks. Please, time is yours.
Speaker on, please.
Masih ke mute, Ibu.
Sorry. Thank you, Tia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Best wishes to all of us. It is a good, happy morning. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all participants, the Honorable Rector of Universitas Respati Indonesia, Prof. Tri Budi, and Rector of Universitas Respati Yogyakarta, representing by Mr. Setianto as a Vice Rector, and the Chairman of Respati Health Institute, Dr. Lilis Lisnawati, like the lecturers, Professor Eve Holgervos, Professor at Loughborough University, United Kingdom. Welcome back to Respati, Prof. Eve. Glad to see you again. And Prof. Barry Bogin, Emeritus Professor Biological Anthropology, Loughborough University, United Kingdom. And also Mrs. Destri Elvira, MPH, as a moderator. And to all of you, academic community of Urindo, Unrio, Stikes Respati Tasikmalaya, Loughborough University, and all participants. First of all, I would like to convey warmest regards from the Chairman of Respati Foundation to all of you. He hopes that you will enjoy your general lecture. It is an honor for me, on behalf of the Respati Foundation, to welcome everyone who comes to general lecture, the dementia prevention from childhood to old age, in person at the campus C Urindo, or via Zoom or YouTube. This general lecture was organized by 3 educational institutions under the Respati Foundation, which is Urindo, Unrio, and Stikes Respati, and also in collaboration with Loughborough University, UK. Ladies and gentlemen, gerontology is the study of aging and older adults, include the social, cultural, and physiological, cognitive, and biological aspect of aging. The science of paleontology has evolved as longevity has improved. Researchers in these fields are diverse and are trained in areas such as physiology, social science, public health, and policy. Gerontology is multidisciplinary and concerned with physical, mental, and social aspect and implication of aging. So this general lecture, it could be beneficial for our community so they can learn and We hope that today's general lecture could expand all of our knowledge because caring for the elderly is not only the responsibility of professional caregivers, but also the most important environment around the elderly, especially the family. That's it for my short remarks. Enjoy participating in this general lecture. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the General Lecture Committee for all of their hard work in putting this event together. Akhirul kalam, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. University, for your welcome remarks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now we will start the lecture session, which will be chaired by Mrs. Desti Elvira Puspaningtyas, SGZ MPH, dietitian. Allow me to introduce our moderator, Mrs. Desti Elvira Puspaningtyas, SGZ MPH, dietitian, is an assistant professor with 9 years of teaching experience in nutrition program. She graduated from a bachelor program of health nutrition and master program in public health science. Also in 2020, she continued her study in internship program of dietetics at Gajah Mada University. She fulfills the responsibility as an assistant professor at Universitas Respati, Yogyakarta from September 2022. At the present, she plays the role of head of research, community service, and scientific publication. As a lecturer, she has been working at the university since 2015, at present in Universitas Respati, Yogyakarta. She has a strong interest in her research project as well as her research field in clinical and sport nutrition. She teaches about the nutrition in life cycle, nutrition and dietetics, and sport nutrition. As a researcher, she got a NutriFood research grant in 2017 entitled Potency of Gatotan Flour on Metabolic Profile Improvement, study of AMPK and AKTPI3K gene expression in skeletal muscle. That research has continued until now, and she gets a fundamental grant 2023 from the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology, Republic of Indonesia. And its research brings the topic effectiveness of inulin and glucoman modified growth cookies for diabetic diet. Okay. Mrs. Desti, you will lead this session for about 1.5 hours, including question and answer. Please respect the time. Time is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tia, for the time given to me. Good morning, our discussed guests, delegate, ladies and gentlemen in this room and also in our Zoom platform. Warm welcome to our Honorable Steering Committee, Respati Education Foundation, Ms. Tiwi Nurhastuti SAMCom, our Honorable Rector of Urindo, Prof. Dr. Tribudi Wahyuni Raharjo, and our Honorable Rector of Unrio, Prof. Dr. Santoso SPOK, represented by Dr. Stianto DEA, and Honorable Chairwoman of Stickers Respati Tasikmalaya, Dr. Lilis Lisnawati. Yes. And our Honorable Chairperson of Committee, Dr. Ani Nuraini MM. Okay, the fourth woman. And then Honorable Speaker, Prof. Eve Hogerfors, Professor at Loughborough University, UK. Okay, few women. Okay, so many women. And also Prof. Barry Bogin, Emeritus Professor of Biological Anthropology, Loughborough University, UK. Great to see you, Prof. Eve and Prof. Barry. And also all participants, guests, and delegates here and in Zoom platform. This is a great honor for me to be standing here as a moderator in general lecture entitled Dementia Prevention from Childhood to Old Age. And this general lecture was organized by Universitas Respati Indonesia, collaborating with Universitas Respati Yogyakarta and Stikas Respati Tasikmalaya. Before we start the program, let me inform you about the structure of the lecture session today. We have two great and honorable speakers, Prof. Eve Hogerfors as the first speaker, and then we will continue or move on to Prof. Barry Bogin as the second speaker. And after the presentation and explanation, we will continue it with the question and answer session. And still remember that we are in the meeting, so please give kindly attention. Without further ado, we will move on to the next agenda. Prof. Eve Hogerfors' presentation entitled How to Diagnose and How to Know the Risk Factor of Getting Dementia in Indonesia. But before that, I permit to read your profile first, Prof. Professor Eve Hogerfors is a professor from Loughborough University, one of the top 10 universities in UK. Please a big applause. And before this, he worked at Oxford and Cambridge University. Wow. To investigate risks and protective factors for dementia, as well as early diagnosis. And she holds several chairs in Indonesia and is visiting professor at Urindo and Unrio. With Prof. Tribudi, she has written over 100 publications in international peer-reviewed journal and often invited speaker at international meeting. Please big applause for Prof. Eve Hogerfors. Okay, we would like to invite Prof. Eve Hogerfors to give the speech. Please, Prof.
Thank you so much, for your amazing introduction. And I would like to thank again the wonderful team for putting this together, and the university for inviting me, and Prof. Barry today. It's wonderful to see all my friends and colleagues, some of whom have, or most of whom have actually worked with us, like Professor Kedawati, and of course my Indonesian mom and mentor for a long time, Professor Tribudi Rajaharjo, but also unexpectedly Roja Sukardi, who has worked with us in Yogyakarta. I'm very grateful for her to come, and all my other friends who are here in Indonesia today. So I'll be talking about diagnosis and risk factors for dementia. But what I want to express in this lecture is the importance of the children. Prof. Tribudi already talked about the young people taking over from the older generation. But we need to go further back than that. We need to invest in our children, because the children are the older people of tomorrow. So why am I at Loughborough University? Well, it's very good, but it's very well known for exercise and health. And this is why I went to Loughborough, to learn about the exercise programs to do in older people, but also in children. So we have a large group of investigators, lecturers, who are looking at nutrition and exercise in children. So why is that important for dementia? And why is dementia important? Well, as the chairperson already said, we currently have possibly already about 1.5 million people with dementia in Indonesia, and these numbers are increasing. Is this inevitable? Well, maybe not. In this graph, we can see that the dementia risk goes up with age in the blue area, in the blue graph. So this is a cohort I worked with in Cambridge. But when we looked at this cohort again, years later, we actually saw that the predicted increase did not occur. There were fewer cases of people with dementia than expected. Why? Possibly because of lifestyle. Many people in the UK stopped smoking, took better care of their heart health. And we know now that what's good for our heart is good for our brain. So maybe we can actually prevent the increase of dementia in Indonesia. Dementia prevention is at 3 levels. There is primary, over the lifespan, and this probably starts prenatally before the children are even born. Then there is secondary, that's in the prodromal phase, so before we actually develop dementia. So when we have mild cognitive impairment, it's not yet affecting our daily life. The third level of prevention is when people have dementia, to try to stop the worsening of the symptoms. And I will talk about these 3 ways of preventing in childhood, in midlife, and in older age, because the risk factors are similar, but when to intervene is crucial. To start with children. Children are building up cognitive reserve, and this starts from birth. So this is the amount of knowledge, the amount of connections between the neurons. So to assess this across cultures in children who are illiterate or who are deaf or who have dyslexia, how can we do this? So we developed non-verbal tests to be used initially on the computer, but later we also developed them for paper and pencil tasks to assess how children's brains develop. And this one is very important. It's called the series test. On the top, you can see a series, and the children are asked, just using the gestures, to identify which one is next. Now, in this case, that would be that one. The other 2 tests we also developed, but they didn't do quite as well as this test. This test is about visual reasoning. Now, this seems very easy, but here, in this example, we can see it gets a little more difficult. Okay, so the series there, which one is the next? It would be that one. And it becomes so difficult that when we lost the key, it took 5 professors to identify the last ones in the series. So we had a mathematician, very clever student called Veronica van der Waard, developed this test, and she was super clever. So there is no ceiling effect, nobody gets them all right, but also no floor effect, because the first ones are very easy and they can be done in children from the age of 5. Now on this test, and this was very sad research, we looked at primary school children in the slums in Indonesia who were infected with HIV, but who were treated with AZT, and we compared them against the controls. What we found was that the children with HIV were much affected on this task. In fact, they were 5 to 7 years behind in cognitive development, even though they were given AZT. So the virus, even though it's reduced, its expression is reduced, still affected the brain function. So these children were matched to other children for poverty, education of the parents, etc. But we also found testing children in the class by interposing. So this was a different group of children in the UK. We used other tests, which asked the children to memorize the numbers and the symbols, and they had to fill in the numbers here as fast as they could. So this is a test for concentration and brain speed. The children in the UK, which were given this test and either had to stay in class and do mathematics, or stay in class and do lots of exercises, what we found was that both sets of children learned, but the children who did the exercise improved a lot more. They were much more alert, they had much better concentration, and so they could learn better. So we can improve cognition quite well in children. What was very sad in this UK study, where we now have over 100,000 children living in extreme poverty. This is a big scandal in the UK, one of the richest nations. We found that the children who did not have breakfast had very poor cognitive function. They couldn't learn. So we know that education, cognitive reserve, is a main factor in when you develop dementia. If children are hungry when they come to school, if they are underweight and they show stunting, they will have an increased risk of dementia and other disease in later life. It's a big, big scandal. Now, in Indonesia, many children show stunted growth. It's a big problem, about 1 in 4. Now, the government has been trying to bring it down and is on target to do so. And we hope to further investigate this now with new studies, with UNRIO, with Urindo, with University of Indonesia and others, because it's very important. If we want to prevent dementia, we have to prevent stunting. The two, the physical development and the brain development, are one. This is important because the research by Dr. Roja Sukardi from UNRIO found that the height of the knee to the foot, which is an important indicator of stunting. As we age, we grow smaller, but this gives us an idea how well we grew as children. This was one of the most important predictors of dementia in older people. So how well children grow, their bodies and their brains, is crucial for dementia prevention, and we can identify this using our non-verbal tests, but also some of the verbal tests we use. So what about later life? So we set the seeds for good development early in life. What about later? Well, I told you what is good for the heart is good for the brain, and some of that is affected by gender, by education, and so on. But we can change this. And how we change that over the lifespan was illuminated in a study by Livingston and others in the Lancet. And what they found was that early in life, having good education is crucial. But I showed you, if the children haven't had breakfast, if they're not kept physically active, they are not learning as well. So for the children already, having good nutrition, having exercise, keeping them entertained is very important. Then later in life, in midlife, we will find that, and I will show you some of that data in a minute, that taking care of your heart and the diet is very important. And then in old age, when people have developed dementia, the tertiary dementia of prevention is activities, exercise and psychosocial activities. Now, it doesn't mean that nutrition then isn't important, but when we want to have the biggest effect, this is how we should do it. In early life, making sure the children get education, facilitating it with nutrition, with exercise. In midlife, nutrition and exercise, lifelong learning, but where the emphasis lies, where you get the biggest benefits, is a little bit different, I think, in phase of life. Now, if we look at this, for instance, examples from the UK, several cohorts show that when you get high blood pressure in midlife, is also determined by the cognitive reserve. High blood pressure, can you please be quiet there? Sorry, if you want to talk, please go somewhere else, because I'm an old person, and as an old person, you get distracted. So it's really difficult to follow your train of thought. Okay, so why is this the case? Well, the childhood cognition means that you're also able to get better education. If you get better education, you get more money, and having more money allows you to have good food, to not be so stressed, take many holidays, not live in polluted areas. All of these give you high blood pressure in midlife, and then other things as well. Obesity, high triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, a risk for diabetes. So in midlife in particular, we need to tackle this. Why? Because high blood pressure is only a risk factor in the studies in midlife, not in older age. What happens? So high blood pressure is seen to occur about 15 years before dementia, but then 1 to 2 years before the onset of dementia, suddenly the blood pressure goes down. If we treat the blood pressure, and the Swedish data have shown this, if we treat blood pressure, this doesn't occur, and high blood pressure is no longer a risk factor. Okay, so this is very important. Treatment of high blood pressure in midlife is very good. But if we keep on treating, what happens before the onset of dementia is the blood pressure is low. And in fact, it was in Oxford, when we looked at the people with dementia, the blood pressure was lower. Now, if you keep on treating, you get too low blood pressure and you get orthostatic hypertension. So if people get up, the blood pressure stays down, people have a risk for fall, and they don't have the reflex to stop themselves from falling. They hit their head and the dementia gets worse. So it's very important to keep monitoring the blood pressure and not just keep on treating, but to monitor it. The same is the case for cholesterol. We see a decline. The same is the case for weight. So trying to get all the people to lose weight possibly is not a good idea, because also with the falls, they become very frail. So they lose muscle mass and not the fat mass so much. It might be because people forget to eat, or maybe there is some sort of central mechanism which accelerates weight loss. We don't know. So it's very important in midlife to make sure that the weight is controlled, but also that we treat high blood pressure, treat high cholesterol, and that we have good nutrition and exercise to support that. So the heart disease risk factors are most important in midlife. Most doctors keep on treating, which is not necessarily a good idea. So what about dementia diagnosis? Well, there are many, many tests. In the majority of the dementia cases, we'll talk about Alzheimer's disease. And here, memory is usually one of the first signs that there is a decline. And that should affect activities of daily life. And it shouldn't be caused by something else, like a depression, which is very common in older people. We tested this in Indonesia. I've showed you these data before. So these are from Indonesia, these from Oxford, and the distributions were the same. And this wonderful work was done by our PhD student, Dr. Fidiansyah Munir, supported by Dr. Ira Ismail. And she found that we could use the same cutoff scores for the diagnosis. So we validated the test. So what we use in Oxford, we can use in Indonesia. This is very important. Now, the data in 2006 showed that there was a great diversity in dementia risk in different parts of Indonesia. So it was very high in Borobudur, possibly because there were many old people, but they were also very poor. They did not go to the hospitals to check their blood pressure in midlife. They didn't take the medication. Maybe they couldn't afford it, or it was a cultural aspect. We don't know, but this was a much increased risk. In Sitaga, we see the risk is about the same as it is in the UK. The elderly people there and the middle-aged people ate really good diets with lots of fruit and vegetables. They worked hard, but they were very healthy overall. They had very good social networks, taking care of each other. They drank the green tea, which is the potent antioxidant, as you know. And so these people had about the same risk as in the UK, but in the very affluent areas in Jakarta, the risk was lower. So this might be because a lot of the people there exercised, they did reading, they had social activities, good diets, eating lots of fruit and veg. And you can see that here, especially in that old group, the risk was low, possibly because the poorer people who were most at risk with little education moved away to Jogja and other cheaper places to retire. So we found overall that 1 in 5 people in Borobudur had high levels of dependency, needed help, and 1 in 10 in Jakarta and in Sitan. So in the recent years, what we're finding is that from some of the other data, like STRIDE, this slide is from Dr. Yuda Turana. He was a member of STRIDE, and we find much higher levels of dementia. Almost 1 in 3, almost 1 in 5 in Jakarta there, in Yogyakarta, and it's unclear why that is the case. Now, if we look at these studies, so this was our study, and this was a study by Professor Yvonne Handayani. I will talk about more in a second. And these were some of the other studies. We find exactly the same risk factors. So in older age, lower education, living in the rural parts, in these studies, later studies, also not having a job and being a woman. Previously, that wasn't a problem, but now it seemed to be a problem because the inequality between the men and the women in terms of education, of having a job at an older age, seemed to perhaps have increased. I'm not entirely sure what that was about, but I'll talk more about it in a second. In the later studies, diabetes and stroke became more of a risk, and in all the studies, fruit was a protective factor, eating tempeh was a protective factor, but only in the later studies was weight very important. Undernutrition, not overnutrition, not being overweight, but again, undernutrition. And then in some of the analysis, being unhappy, being depressed, also predicted dementia risk. So what makes people happy? Well, the activities in the Posyandu here by the cadres, being socially active, playing sports, walking, feeling secure. So these are all the things we found in Indonesia to be very important. And also in the UK, we found that people who keep physically active, also the people with dementia, once they keep if they keep being active, even if they have dementia, their memory is much better. And the risk for dementia, the more active they are, the better it is. This was a recent study. This is my father-in-law with my dog who wants him to go for a walk. My father-in-law is 92. Every day he walks 7,000 steps. He has no memory problems. He's very fit. Now, we always look at the magical number of 10,000 steps, and that halves your dementia risk. But also, even if you just walk 3,800, just above sedentary, just sometimes use the stairs, walk to your car, not wait for the driver to come. It will reduce your dementia risk. And the faster you walk, the better it is. So these are data that came from the UK. But we also did some exercise, home-based exercise, resistance band exercise, and this was shown to improve memory in people with and without dementia, as we compared it against just doing yoga, just yoga stretching. On that kit task, the series test I showed you, we also found that these tests in the older people with dementia really improve function. So also the logical reasoning, the planning, the frontal lobes, not just the memory, but also logical reasoning was much improved. Why is that the case? Well, exercise lowers the blood pressure, the bad cholesterol, the fat around the tummy, improves your immune, lung, and heart function, the blood flow to the brain, which is especially important as we have dementia. And this one, regulating the blood glucose, because the older people get the worst at risk of dysregulated blood sugar, so the risk of diabetes, and this can occur in the brain. And most importantly, especially the strength exercises can improve the dendritic outgrowth, so the neurons are growing even in the old people. And the more you work with also visual stimuli, like we let people watch things in nature, for instance, going to the forest for a walk or a zoo to see the animals, to interact with other people, walk in a group. This is all good. We do the resistance band exercises with singing in a group. It's very, very good. So the more you challenge the brain, the more load you put on the brain, the more fun you make it, the better it is. So this is our compression of needs model, Professor Tribhuti and I developed, I think, by the swimming pool in Yogyakarta many years ago. And we try to look at, and we talked about this when we talked about wealth. Wealth is not just in money, but it's also in what we have physically. So are we physically active? Are we healthy? And psychosocially. So continued education throughout the lifespan, being part of a community, these were all really important reducers of the risk. And this is what Professor Handayani found in our recent study funded by the ESRC, where she showed in the IFLS data that, again, not engaging in activity, not engaging in the community, having low education, especially in the rural parts, and very important, being underweight. So making sure that people maintain a healthy weight with good nutrition from children to middle age to old age is very important. And making sure that older people do not become depressed and isolated. Being isolated, being lonely for an older person is as bad as smoking. So make sure you stay in touch with the older people, take them places, to restaurants, activate them. We did a recent case study in Kalianya in Jakarta, very mixed cohort. And here we found that the women were at a much higher risk of dementia than the men, 3 times higher. 2 times higher, and they had a 3 times higher risk of dependency. Now, they were the same as men in terms of age and health, and mood and what have you, but they were much less likely to have received good education. They were much less likely to have a job. They lived with their family and were dependent on the children. And this is what we find in other cohorts as well in the UK, but that gender difference is becoming less. The older people get, especially after the age of 80, we see the higher the risk for dementia. And when we do the age-related incidence, so we look per age strata, we see that after the age of 80, that risk becomes more significant. And it could be because women obtain, in general, a higher age, but also because, in general, they haven't stayed in a job. They usually had jobs of lower status, etc. But another possibility, and this is something we investigated with Dr. Atikridawati, is that women after in midlife, they use their sex steroids, their estrogen, because they go through the change of life to the menopause. And here in Oxford, we found that the levels of estrogens are very low, unless they take a replacement, and then they become like the normal levels. Now, estrogen can really protect the aging brain in so many ways. So it's very beneficial, theoretically. But if we give the replacement, it doesn't work. We don't quite understand why, but it doesn't really work. Now, I came to Indonesia initially because I wanted to investigate the soy products because they contain estrogen-like substances. So they can act, they look like estrogens, the compounds in soy. And Atik, for her PhD, looked at rodents who, like women going through menopause, lost their ability to produce estrogen. And what Atik found was that the memory function first went down after the surgery, and this is something we often see in the women. But then, when they were given Tempe, it was much improved. Their memory was much improved. Much more than just with estrogen and with tofu. And most importantly, the marker for dementia showed a massive increase after surgery, and then with Tempe dropped below the baseline. So this was very promising. Earlier, already in the Indonesian cohort, we had seen that Tempe could really reduce dementia risk, but not tofu. Tofu seemed to act like the estrogens. Actually, estrogens in very old people is not good. Tempeh is, but tofu in very high levels is not so good. We found this in China, in Japan. Not everybody has found it, but we found that it increased dementia risk. And this might depend on what else you are eating, because tempeh contains folate because of the fermentation, many other antioxidants, it contains B12, etc. So when we went to the Posyandu and Puskesmas, we told Puskesmas, or Prof. Tribudi told Puskesmas, to eat more tempeh and less tofu. We found that those people who did this, when we came back after 2 years in 2009 in Jogja, they had better memory. So tempeh can offset potential negative effects of tofu. And also our review with Prof. Handayani showed that there were benefits of tempeh in older people with and without dementia, and the work sponsored by the British Council Newton Trust with Dr. Atik also showed it worked in middle-aged women. So women who were going through menopause, especially Indonesian menopause women, not only had better memory, but also better blood glucose, better cholesterol, etc. So their overall health was much improved. So the primary prevention really needs to start in childhood. We need to ensure that the children have good education for good cognitive reserve, but they cannot benefit from this unless they have good nutrition and they are kept active. In the UK currently, many of the exercise programs in the schools are reduced and stopped because it costs too much time and money and the children need to learn. But we've shown that the children can learn much better if they're able to run around and get rid of that energy in between the lessons. And they enjoy it much more, especially the boys. The heart disease risk factors, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, being overweight, smoking, we really need to treat them in midlife. This is the biggest point when we need to treat them by, preferably before, but the latest in midlife to reduce the dementia risk. We also need to monitor, especially treating for high blood pressure, to make sure we don't get hypotension, because that's also not good. Also, we need to monitor the elderly to make sure they don't become underweight and frail. And for this, we need to maintain good nutrition and especially exercise. And then very, very important is, once people have developed dementia, to of course ensure good nutrition, but the most important is to keep people active with exercise and group-based activity. Because the women were at so much of a higher risk, especially in rural and deprived areas, we need to make sure that they have adequate education. Because in an older age, we see that many of them don't have a job and are dependent on their children, and they have a much higher risk for dementia. If women go through early menopause, in particular surgical menopause, We need to make sure that they have estrogen replacement, or better still, Tempe, because Tempe is very safe. It also doesn't increase the risk for breast cancer, which estrogen replacement therapy does. So the government can help with education, especially for rural girls or girls in the deprived area, to support their active aging, including, very importantly, having a job and maintaining that job to support themselves. Because when their husbands fall away, or if they don't want to get married, they still need to be able to support themselves and not be dependent on others. Prof. Tribudi told me that in Jogja, the culture is slightly different. So even though the older people live with the children, they still want to maintain their own independence. But of course, this could lead to undernutrition if people can't really take care of themselves. So it's very important to observe the cultural differences. And in that, the community can play a huge role in helping people to stay active at all ages, maintain the healthy weight, and to eat well to prevent dementia. So this is what is done in Indonesia at the Posyandu, and it would be a very good model for the UK and other countries where you have the community centers with volunteers who help the family, who help the individual with health checks, making sure the nutrition is good, the weight is good, and give the family the knowledge transfer. And this is very important work currently carried out by Urindo and Orio in training the cadres. Then to do the physical exercise, and at the community center we were this week, they were doing lots of sport and people were really enjoying that. And it also gives people a sense of a community, a sense of security. And that means that your sense of self, of being meaningful and enjoying life is maintained. So I think the cadres in particular play a very important role. And of course, Onrio and Orio in training them and supporting them. So the prevention of dementia is a lifelong approach. There are many negative things we can do to accelerate aging, but there are also positive things like good diets prenatally, the education to create cognitive reserve, doing health checks, making sure that people are supported, and then the group-based physical activities and psychosocial activities. I would like to thank everybody who's been part of this research. I hope we continue this. All these people are mentioned here. The team who is present here, and also the people from Cambridge and Oxford, and of course all the people who funded us in the past. But as Tribudi said, it looks like a lot, but actually the most we have done is just with great love and dedication, because money isn't always so easy to get by. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Okay, please take applause again for Prof. If. Thank you, Prof, for the very insightful speech, because we know that there is a collaboration, there is a correlation between nutrition, exercise, and also health care, especially how to prevent dementia care. Okay, please, Prof, maybe you want to sit here. Oh, okay. Okay, moving on to the next agenda, we invite Prof. Ferry to deliver the presentation about the life history biology of childhood, adolescence, and grandmotherhood. Okay, but before that, allow me to read your profile first, Prof. Okay, please. Okay, Prof. Ferry Bogin is a professor emeritus of biological anthropology of the School of Sports, Exercise, and Health Sciences, Loughborough University, United Kingdom. He received his PhD in anthropology from Temple University in 1977. Wow. You're like my grandfather. Okay. Because I'm still 30. And Prof. Ferry Bogin has expertise in human physical growth and development, nutritional ecology, evolutionary biology, Maya people,
and human adaptation. And the focus of his research is to explain how social, economic, political, emotional force influence human physical development. He has authored more than 240 books, wow, articles, book chapters, and popular essay. And these include the book's Pattern of Human Growth, Human Variability and Plasticity, Human Biology, an Evolutionary and Biocultural Approach, second edition, okay, and the Growth of Humanity, okay. It's an honor for us to welcome Prof. Berry to deliver the speech. Please, Prof. Berry.
Thank you very much. Morning, everybody. Morning. Being my friend and my colleague for at least 10 years, and we met in Loughborough some time ago. I came to Indonesia in 2013, and it's such an honor to be back with you today. Thank you all for coming and supporting me in person and also online. So yes, this is my talk, Life History Biology of Childhood, Adolescence, and Grandmotherhood. There is a photograph or a painting, sorry, by an artist named, I think it's Elizabeth Wolf, in the called Comfort, and that's between a grandmother and her granddaughter. And yes, I could be your grandfather, but I am the grandfather. I am the grandfather of two much younger girls. Only 7 and 6 years old. They live back in the United States. I am from the United States. Originally, I came to the UK to work at Loughborough University in 2007, and now I am retired from that. What retired means, I don't get any money. But I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky because I had grandparents, parents who loved me, and a family that supports me, and I was able to save money. I have a reserve of money, and I mention that only because I'm going to talk about your biological reserve today. And if you want to be healthy when you are old, like me, you have to have a biological reserve as well as an economic reserve. Professor Eve was talking about having an economic reserve to live well, but you need a biological reserve. Yes, yes. You need a good social network at every age. As a baby, it's maybe your mother or close family members, but as you get older, it's your friends, your school mates, and then your colleagues are super important. Okay, so my message today is that we are human beings and we are very unusual animals. No other animal would be in this room sitting, listening to me talk. Okay. And we behave in very funny ways. We don't bite each other too much when we're in social situations. In other words, we can inhibit our aggression to a great extent. We can love each other. We are the only species on the planet that has evolved the life stages of childhood, adolescence, and what I'm calling grandmotherhood. But what I mean is the time of life, 10, 20, or 30 years after menopause for women. That's what I mean by grandmotherhood. And I mentioned grandmotherhood because men do not have anything like menopause. Yeah, I know there's some people talking about andropause, but I can tell you from personal experience, men do not have anything like menopause. Total cessation of reproduction
ability. Okay. So these new stages of our life cycle allow people to reproduce at a faster rate, keep alive more of our offspring, our babies, than any other mammal. I'll show that in a moment. And there is a downside to all this, a risk, that these new life stages do come with risks. Because we take 20 years to reach adulthood, bad things can happen to us in those 20 years. And because we live so long after we stop reproducing, bad things can happen to us in older age. Let me start with two life histories to give you an idea of what biologists mean by life history. It's not where were you born and where did you go to school, but rather the biological events that happen in your life. So the first life history is about a female named Fifi. And Fifi was born in 1958 in Africa, in Tanzania. At age 13, she had her first birth. So for females, age at first birth is one life history event. And how long between birth and then you start reproducing. So her age at first birth was 13 years. At age 44, she had her last birth, and that was 9 births that we know about. 8 of her live-born babies survived, and that we know she had 7 living grandchildren. So that's a total of 15 offspring, 8 plus 7. The second life history is a female called Ethel, and she was born in 1908 in what today is Ukraine. At age 22, she had her first birth. At age 29, she had her second birth. I know that she had 1 miscarriage between those. She has 2 living children. She has 5 grandchildren, 10 great-grandchildren, and 1 great-great-grandchild. So she has 18. She had 18 total offspring. So more than Fifi. Even though Fifi started earlier, 13 versus 22, Ethel has more. So let me introduce Fifi. Fifi is one of the most famous chimpanzees. Fifi was studied by Jane Goodall. When Jane Goodall arrived in Africa in 1963, Fifi was already born. Fifi's mother was called Flo, and Flo was the matriarch, the dominant female of the group that Jane Goodall first became friends with, we'll say, habituated. So Fifi is here with 2 of her offspring, Faustino and Ferdinand. And in 1993, Fifi provided all their care. And although she had some grandchildren, 5 grandchildren, she never really invested in her grandchildren. Fifi's daughters had to do all the care of the grandchildren because Fifi was taking care of her own babies. And a chimpanzee baby stays with the mother for 4.5 or 5 years, is nursing, getting breast milk for 4.5 or 5 years. So the mother cannot invest in grandchildren. She just doesn't have the energy. Okay. This is Ethel and her 2 daughters. Okay, now Ethel lived to 98 years of age and passed away in 2007. She invested a great deal of time, energy, and resources in the care of her grandchildren. I know this because that is me. And that is my grandmother, Ethel. That's my mother, and that's her sister. And this is, I was born in 1950. I was born in 1950. This is in Philadelphia. And there's my grandmother. She always wore the scarf in her head and the apron when she was working in the house, just like back in Ukraine. Okay? So, this is Charles Darwin. I'm not related to Charles Darwin. Darwin did many observations on human development and the development of other animals. He was one of the first scientists to understand the importance of photography. So here he is in 1842 with his eldest son, William Erasmus Darwin. Notice how William is dressed. Until about age 7, boys and girls were usually dressed the same way in England and Europe, and usually in what we would call girls' clothing. And they would usually have long hair. So at about age 7, between 6 and 7, they would get their hair cut and start wearing boys' clothing. And that's important. Age 6 and 7 is the transition from childhood to juvenile life history stage. But Darwin, we don't know how much he invested really in his children. This is Darwin's wife. She's really the one who's important. Emma Darwin. And this is an illustration of her at age 32 and a photograph of her. I don't know how old she was here. This is after Charles Darwin died. She lived until age 88 and died in the year 1896. Okay. Emma Darwin had 10 children, the first at age 31 years and the last at age 48. 7 of them survived to adulthood. So 3 of her live-born babies died. In the 19th century, there were many infectious diseases, and even children of the rich, and the Darwins were very rich. Emma Darwin was the daughter of a very, very, very rich family, the Wedgwood family. She was also Charles Darwin's first cousin. So, a little bit about their family. So 7 of her children survived. This is Emma Darwin's life. She's born here. She dies here at age 88. She has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 babies, one right after the other. Now, she had maids who took care of the babies, nurses, including wet nurses to breastfeed the babies. So Emma Darwin had a lot of help with her babies, and she could have one baby every 18 months. This is not her baby. This is the grandson. And they adopted, that's grandson Bernard. The Darwins adopted Bernard after Bernard's mother died in childbirth. And I'll talk about adoption in a moment as well. This is Fifi. So Fifi is born, Fifi dies, and she has her baby. See how they're more spaced out? At least 5 years between babies, because Fifi has to take care of every baby just herself. She has to breastfeed every baby for 4.5 years. And then slowly the babies start to learn to eat the adult food. So Fifi is very unusual. Most female chimps have 5 or 6 births and only 2 survive. Fifi had all these births and most of them survived because she was a very high status chimpanzee, very powerful. She had the best food, the best sleeping places, and she associated with the best male chimpanzees, the most powerful male chimpanzees. So that's what Professor Eve was talking about. If you're high social status, you are healthier, and your babies are healthier. Humans, all humans are very unusual compared with chimps. People successfully rear more offspring to adulthood than any other mammal, including the primates, including chimpanzees. 50 to 60% of live-born children survive to adulthood, even in foraging societies like Central African pygmies, the traditional societies of Philippines, Indonesia, everywhere in the world. 50 to 60 or 70% of live-born babies survive to adulthood. In the wealthier nations, the industrialized, post-industrial nations, this is from Portugal. These are children, migrants to Portugal from the Cape Verde Islands, and that we worked with some years ago. And in the wealthy nations, over 90% of live-born babies survive to adulthood. Really, 97, 98% of live-born babies survive. Okay, so that's very unusual. In chimpanzees, as I said, they have to take care of their baby for 4 to 5 years. They only have a new birth every 6 years, and only about 1/3 of babies survive adulthood. And that's very good. For other social mammals like lions and hyenas, only 10 or 12% of live-born babies survive. So in rats and mice, only 1% or 1/10 of 1% of all the live-born babies survive to adulthood. We are very, very unusual. Why these chimp-human differences is what I want to talk about. We take longer to grow. My grandmother, Ethel, she had her first baby at 22, Fifi at 13. So why do we take so long to grow up? Why the differences in age of first birth? Why can we have babies so quickly, whereas Fifi only every 5 years? Why do more of our offspring survive? Why do we live so long? My grandmother lived to 98. My mother is now 93. Okay, so she's more or less okay. And also, why this difference into our ability to care for our children and grandchildren, and even adopt the children of other people? No other animal really does that. You can read some books that say chimps adopt babies, but they really don't adopt them the way we do. In every human culture, people adopt babies that are not their own babies. Okay, so this gets to the heart of what is biological life history theory, and I say it's a strategy. It's not a conscious strategy. It's an evolutionarily it's an evolved strategy. It's of all organisms, how to allocate the limited energy we have and the limited time we have alive towards our own growth, how to maintain our bodies, to reproduce, to invest in our offspring until they're independent, and how to avoid death. So all animals have to do this. You have to be born, you have to survive, you have to produce, you have to take care of your baby sometimes, from bacteria to people, elephants, whales, oak trees, everything has a life history strategy. Now, for mammals, it is when to be born, in other words, how long to gestate, when to be weaned, that is, mammals by definition give milk, mother's milk to their babies. So for how long? A few days, a few weeks, a few years? How many and what type of pre-reproductive stages to pass through? And when to start to reproduce, and even when to die. When to die is biologically part of us. It's not just an accident. Some species die young, some species die old. Here is an illustration of typical human physical growth, in this case in height. So we're born, that's the 0, that's 2 years of age, 4 years of age, up to age 22. So here is how tall you are, or how long you are. At birth, about 50 centimeters long. And by 1 year of age, about 75 centimeters long. So very fast growth in that first year. But then a little bit of growth, a little bit of growth. Finally, here we are at puberty. Girls get a little taller than boys on average because girls mature faster than boys. But then the boys have their puberty and adolescence, and the boys usually end up taller. So these are data from Switzerland, from a long-term Swiss study, and here the boys were about 181 or 182 centimeters on average, and the girls about 170 centimeters on average at adulthood. So this is called the distance curve, how much you have grown from birth to adulthood, the distance you've traveled. Here we have how fast you're growing at any age. It's called the velocity curve. And here you can see the height velocity. So at birth, height velocity is very fast, more than 20 centimeters per year. But velocity decreases very quickly, so that at 3 years of age, you have a steady velocity of about 6 centimeters per year. At about 7 years of age, a small increase in velocity, then a decrease. And then with puberty, and girls have puberty earlier than boys, about 2 years earlier. So about 11 years of age in these Swiss girls, you have what is called the adolescent growth spurt. Spurt means a rapid increase in the velocity or the rate of growth. And 2 years later, at about 14, boys reach their peak velocity. And the reason boys are taller than girls on average, although many women are taller than I am, the reason boys are taller is they grow for 2 years longer before adolescence. They have a more intense growth spurt, and they grow a little bit longer after, during adolescence and mature at a slightly later age. And that adds about 11 or 12 centimeters. Boys on average are about 11 to 12 centimeters taller than women. Okay, so it's the velocity that shows us the life history stages. This is the infancy stage, when you're supposed to be receiving mother's milk. This is the childhood stage, when growth is relatively steady. This is the juvenile stage, when growth rates are declining. This is the adolescence stage with the growth spurt. And then finally, the mature stage, when it's okay to start having your own babies. You should wait until your own body stops growing until you start to have babies, because if you have babies, like teenage pregnancy is bad because the mother is still growing and she takes resources for her own body, and that can hurt her fetus and herself. Okay. So other animals do not have these stages. Here's the mouse. So after birth, the mouse has like one spurt. That's because before birth, the mother has poor feeding of the mouse fetus. And there are usually many mice gestating at one time, 6, 10, 12. And after birth, the mother gives her babies milk, and milk is more nutritious, and they have one spurt. Within about 3 weeks after birth, they are sexually mature. Those stars mean sexual maturation. 3 weeks after you're born, female mice start having their own babies. And size doesn't matter. This is a cow, and we can measure, and this is measured in weight velocity, in grams of weight added per day. This is measured in skeletal growth from the bottom of the foot, the hoof, to the top of the shoulder blade, or the withers, is the way the farmer measures cow growth. And you can see different kinds of cows also have one spurt after birth, then a decline. This is when they stop getting mother's milk. This is when they become sexually mature, puberty. But in nature, this is because between the end of getting their mother's milk, weaning, and puberty, the farmer takes the milk to sell the milk to make money. But in nature, the mother cow would continue to feed her baby right up to puberty and then stop. So there is no childhood, and there's no juvenile period either. These animals, mouse and cow, only have 2 stages: infancy and adult. Get mother's milk, that's infancy. Start making your own babies, that's adult. So here in pictures, we just have, again, birth, human birth. This is a hospital birth, of course, very unusual in human history. Only recently we have these kinds of hospital births. Here's the early infant period, later infant period, and childhood period. Infancy is you get milk from your mother. Childhood, you may not get milk from your mother, but somebody has to feed you. Human children are still totally dependent on some older person. So this is a famous painting by Mary Cassatt, who painted a lot of mother and child and the dependency. Juveniles can begin to feed themselves. So from about age 7, you can begin to survive on your own. And for instance, so-called street children, children living alone on the street, are really not children. They are usually 6.5, 7 years of age, at minimum, at least, because under about 7 years of age, they cannot survive on their own. But by 7, you have the cognitive and the physical strength and physical motor abilities to survive on your own. So so-called street children are really street juveniles. Our research has shown that true all over the world. Okay, and we have all those stages. Those are the growth velocities again. Then we have adolescence. This is from a postcard I found in Portugal from a famous Portuguese photographer, and it's called Learning to Kiss. This is on the school ground, and you can see these are very young adolescents. Puberty is just starting. The sex hormones are just beginning to increase, and she is She is testing all of that with this boy. She thinks it's very funny. These two girls think it's very funny. She's not sure, and she says, "No way is a boy ever going to kiss me." So adolescence is, in addition to childhood, is in addition to our very large brains, the fact that we walk on two legs, and it's part of our unique reproductive development, our sexual development, as a defining factor in humans. Okay, around the world, adolescence is celebrated in one way or another. These are Samburu people of East Africa. The adolescent girls here are, they're tapping together sticks to create a rhythm. And the boys are dancing, and in the dance, they jump as high as they can. So the boy who jumps the highest is the sexiest. Okay. They're showing off their physical strength. They're showing off their biological and cognitive capacities, because it's like sports. The top sports athletes are smart people. They can't be stupid people. The top musicians, I know more musicians than sports people. The best musicians are very smart people, but they also have tremendous motor and physical abilities to do what they do in sport or on stage. And so the boys are showing off how good they are to be husbands and fathers. And the girls, as you see, are wearing lots of headdresses and very nice clothing to show off that they are good mothers and wives. So adolescence, I think, evolved in our species because it enabled boys and girls to learn how to be more reproductively successful. I don't have time to go through it all today, but during adolescence, boys and girls go through apprenticeships to learn how to be good fathers, mothers, workers, colleagues. We call it schooling. We put our adolescents in boxes called classrooms, but we do the same thing. So again, also during adolescence, we have this adolescent growth spurt, this physical sign that people are changing from immature to mature. So the growth spurt is what biologists call a social signal that you are maturing. Okay, chimpanzees do not have this growth spurt. Here is the velocity curve of growth for chimpanzees. And they have a juvenile stage. This is when females become reproductively mature between age 8. Remember, Fifi had her first birth at 9, and there's no growth spurt. These are data from my colleagues in Japan who measured a group of chimpanzees at the Primate Research Center in Kyoto, Professors Hamada and Udono. So, grandmothers at the other stage, these are East African hunter-gatherers, the Hadza people. Grandmothers are very important in the Hadza to take care of children and take care of their daughters and keep their daughters and their grandchildren alive. Grandfathers are important as well, but only women have a complete cessation of reproduction, the menopause. Men, we know from various sources, Abraham in the Old Testament had children at age 80, so men can have babies throughout their lives. Okay, there are two hypotheses that I think are most powerful to explain why people live so long and why human women have menopause. One is called the grandmother hypothesis by my colleague Kristen Hawkes, who's a professor from the University of Utah in the United States. And her best papers from 1998, it's the selection for lower adult mortality. A reduction of mortality, death of adults allows for greater longevity. And this allowed for the slower growth from birth to adulthood. So Professor Hawke says it was a reduction of mortality in adults because of our culture, our social groups, our technology, our big brains allows adults to survive longer, and that allows for slower growth of babies infants, children, juveniles, adolescents. So she sees it from adulthood perspective. But this hypothesis really does not consider childhood and adolescence. You won't find those words in her articles. It only, she does consider infancy and juveniles a little bit, but really her emphasis is on adults, the adult stage of life. The other hypothesis that I like better is called the reserve capacity hypothesis. And I've published a paper on this, and my colleague Douglas Cruz from University of Ohio has published a lot on this books. So our hypothesis is that selection for the prolonged growth of infants, but especially children, juveniles, and adolescents, allows for healthier adults and longer life and better reproduction, more babies. So reserve capacity in the context of life history are those somatic resources, the body, the physical body, and the brain that exceed the minimum for sustaining life. So your reserve is like money in the bank. Some people have no money in the bank. They live from day to day, right? From paycheck to paycheck. Some people have money in the bank and can afford holidays and to invest in their grandchildren and things like that. So if your reserve capacity is your necessary capacity, that's what you need just to stay alive, plus all the reserves, all the extra capacity, your total achieved capacity, the extra muscle, the extra fat, the extra bone, the extra brain cells, that's your total achieved capacity. And when you subtract the necessary, then you have enough. Okay. So in my view, and Douglas Cruz, you must build reserve capacity during gestation, and you must build it during infancy, otherwise you don't survive. But it's especially childhood and adolescence, these ones I put in this sort of red color, that you can either gain or lose reserve capacity. If you suffer as a child, if you're abused or neglected, it'll be minus. If you're loved and cared for, well-fed, you'll get plus reserve capacity. You'll get that during the juvenile stage, but it's those 3-4 years of childhood and 6 to 8 years of adolescence. 6 to 8 years we are in the adolescent stage when you really can gain or lose reserve capacity. So for me, those are most important. In the early adult years, you know, from about 20 to 30, we can also gain or lose reserve capacity, depending if we have a good life or a bad life. But after about age 30, I'm sad to say, after age 30, it is mostly lost reserve capacity. We lose brain cells, we lose bone cells, we lose muscle cells after age 30. Very few top performing athletes after age 30, or even musicians and other creative people. And of course, women have the menopause when there is an acceleration of some loss of reserve capacity. So here is one study of age changes in broad cognitive ability. This is from birth to 100. This is the average. And these are one standard deviation above, one below. These people took some sort of cognitive test, like Professor Eve's cognitive test or something, at least 2 times. And then you could look at the changes between younger age and later age and get these curves. And what you can see very clearly is that after about age 30, actually after about age 26, cognitive ability declines in the highest cognitive ability, the average, and even the lowest. Some people have very dramatic declines in cognitive ability. That's one person, the earlier test, the later test. Okay. And here, that's the median cognitive ability. So if you're below that line, if you're below this line, you have problems. The reserve capacity hypothesis is the one I like because it focuses on early life. When you're building all of this reserve capacity, you see how reserve capacity in cognitive ability is going up. So I like the childhood and adolescence perspective because it enhances the fertility of mothers. Having childhood and adolescence, even though it takes longer to start reproducing, because you have more physical reserve, cognitive reserve, and more social reserve, all the people around us who help us raise our babies, our grandmothers. We keep alive more of our babies, like you saw with Emma Darwin or with my grandmother Ethel. We improve childhood and adolescence improve the life of the mother and her survival, and it helps their young develop resilient phenotypes that allow them to live longer. So I think that human life history evolved at many levels. I call it a multi-level kind of selection. Level one is that here's a mother with an infant that she has to nurse, but she has a child. And childhood means she can feed this young person with other foods. And she doesn't have to feed the child. Other people, the grandmother, an auntie, a nurse, schools can feed that child. So childhood allows for slow development and building good reserve capacity, but the mother doesn't have to do it all. She can go on and have another baby. So Emma Darwin had one baby every 18 months, whereas Fifi every 5 years. At a second level, childhood does prolong our dependency on not just the mother, but other people. And this leads to what we call a trade-off, a give and take, a trade-off, which I call cooperative breeding. We cannot have babies on our own. Not only is it good to have helpers, but we cannot survive without having helpers. And here's an example from my own research that I showed in the previous seminar. This is Guatemala. These are Maya women. That is the grandmother or the mother-in-law. And that is a daughter-in-law, that's a daughter-in-law, that's a daughter-in-law, that's a daughter-in-law, that's a daughter-in-law. In the Maya culture, when the sons get married, their wives come to live with them in one large family. Anthropologists call this patrilocal residence. You come to live with the husband's family. And the mother-in-law, the grandmother, is the boss. And she's a very tough boss, just like Professor Tribudi. And here are the grandchildren, infants, children. There's one juvenile girl here. There are no adolescent girls because, in fact, this was an age 15 birthday party. Sometimes we talk about sweet 16 in the United States, but in Guatemala, age 15 is the important birthday for girls. And all the 15-year-olds and older girls, the adolescents, were off having fun together. The adolescents are not good babysitters. The juveniles are good babysitters for these children. Okay. And at the third level, this slow growth, the building of more reserve capacity makes for greater adult health, fitness, and longevity. The trade-off is you don't start reproducing until you're about 19, 20, 21 years of age. Age at first birth in the human species averages 19 across the entire planet and throughout history. And many people have looked at this before 19, you're still growing. The woman is still growing. So it's a bad idea to have a baby. So age at marriage and age at first birth is usually around 19. So we do lose, it would be nice to have babies when we're 3 weeks old, right? Just like a mouse, but not a good idea. Okay. Once life expectancy passes 45 to 50 years of age, most mammals stop reproducing. So that's the post-reproductive life stage. But most mammals, like chimpanzees, die by about, usually in their 30s. Fifi lived to age 44. That's a very old chimpanzee. But she stopped reproducing at about age 36. And her last baby lived with her. And when Fifi died, the last baby also died. He was like, so tied to his mother And his mother was so old and not able to teach him how to live on his own. And nobody else would take care of him. So when she died a few weeks later, he starved to death. Okay, it's time to stop. Okay, so this is just that red bit there just shows that no other animal really has a long life after menopause. Only humans, not chimps and not our ancestors like Homo habilis or Homo erectus, first discovered here in Java, lives past menopause. And then finally, there are risks for our long life. There are risks for childhood. Some children, of course, suffer hunger, stunting, neglect, and abuse. Adolescents will take many risks. Drugs, smoking, brain malfunctions increase during human adolescence because of bio-emotional pressures. There's sexual exploitation, sexual diseases, and of course, early pregnancy are all risks of adolescence. And finally, today, we of course know about the risks of postmenopausal life, osteoporosis, the dementias, and retirement. Retirement is a great risk, and that's why I'm here with you, to stay active and to stay young.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Berry, for a very comprehensive explanation. Now we move on to the question and answer session. Before that, we will invite Prof. Eve and Prof. Berry to join us. Okay, we encourage participants. Okay, yes, by asking a question, and the questions can be asked directly by the participant here and can be asked in the Zoom chat room. And please ask the question and mention to whom the questions are. Okay, maybe we will invite the participant here. Okay, Dr. Zain.
Thank you. It's very interesting lecture today. I would like to ask to Prof. E and Prof. Barry Bogan. For Prof. E, I would like to know about more about the relationship between childhood IQ and dementia. Are the children with a low IQ will get dementia sooner? And Prof. Barry Bogan, I would like to know more about the measurement of longevity, their life expectancy or what? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. That's a great question. In the slides, I showed that the cognitive reserve is associated with IQ, is associated with how much education you can have. But of course, also the level of your family stimulation, your family environment is very important with this, as Prof. Barry showed. So it's quite difficult to entangle what IQ really is. It's problematic in the way that we test it, because a lot of the tests are not necessarily cross-culturally applicable. For instance, one of the tests asks about verbal comprehension. What are tassels? What are calipers? I didn't know this when I came to England. No idea what that was. So I think we have to be very careful when we measure IQ. Is it applicable to the population? Which is why we developed the non-verbal test. It was based on a non-verbal IQ test for deaf children, to make sure that we didn't have to use language, because the use of language and how we use it is very important. It's very much connected to where you socially come from. So in order to really measure The brain reserve capacity, in particular the frontal areas, which, as Prof. Berry said, develop late in childhood, the planning, the reasoning, but which are crucial, which are one of the first areas to go in aging. As I just said, for instance, I can't dual task anymore. My brain can only do one thing these days. Whereas in the past, we were talking about this morning, I could be on the phone, write an article, and answer a question from a student all at the same time. Now I can only do one thing. So I can only be on the phone or write an article or talk to a student. So this is what happens with normal aging. And when we look at IQ, there's definite relationship. There have been many studies in the UK showing that childhood IQ at age 11 determined the age of onset of dementia. But it's also associated with risk factors already in midlife, like the high blood pressure. So we see that it's a very complicated interaction when we just look at IQ, because it has to do with the environment that the children come from, the support they get, as well as the environment they create for themselves. So how rich are they? How relaxed are they? How do they do lifelong learning? So for that reason, I think it's very important, and your question is very, very important, is how can we stimulate the cognitive reserve? Not the IQ per se, but our ability to respond to the demands of everyday living, to be able to engage with others optimally. And that we can do with lifelong learning. But we do need to have adequate nutrition to do it. And we need exercise to keep the brain intact, to make sure there's blood coming to the brain, so the nutritional components can actually get to the brain, and we don't have atherosclerosis or what have you. So I hope that answered your question a little bit. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's the big question. The most important, perhaps. There's a history of study of brains and bodies and longevity in biological research, gerontology research, because we humans have such a big brain in proportion to our total body size. Now, our brain weighs 2 kilograms at best, and our bodies much more. But most mammals and non-mammals, have such a infinitesimally much smaller central nervous system and brain than we do. So, and our brain is very greedy. While you students are sitting here sleeping through my talk, you're using 20% of all the oxygen and all the energy, the glucose in your bloodstream to support your brain. 20%. So that's usually how we really look at how important the brain is, how much metabolism it takes. And as an infant, human infants, 87% of all the oxygen and energy in the body is supporting the brain, because during prenatal life and infancy, that's when the brain develops the fastest. Then oxygen, glucose usage goes down, and very interestingly, at the transition from childhood to juvenile, there is another increase. The brain has a different spurt, a different growth spurt, and it's just at that transition between the dependent child who still needs someone to feed him or her to the independent, more independent juvenile. There's a spike in brain metabolism, not brain size, but brain metabolism. And then it goes down again for the rest of our life. But still remains very high. At the adults, 20% of all the energy and oxygen in your body is used for your brain. Most other creatures, chimpanzees, it's down at about 9%. So they use much more for their muscles, their body. So the brain is probably the key to all this. And we build a tremendously valuable brain during fetal life, during infancy and childhood, and that brain has to take care of us the rest of our life. And if it's in good condition, it has lots of reserve capacity, then we can live not just long, but also healthy. And I think a lot of research shows that other animals with the brain size to body size ratio, when the brain is relatively bigger, they live longer. So there's a correlation. What is the causation? That's difficult, but there's a strong correlation between the brain to body size ratio and how long and expectation of life.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Very much. Yeah. Because there's many correlation and many other factors that can contribute to brain size and brain function, especially how to parent take care or care for the children and how they fulfill the nutrition requirement and how the nutrition can be metabolized appropriately. Maybe like that. Okay, Dr. Zainal, enough? Okay, thank you. Okay. Please mention your name first and mention your organization.
Nama saya Ali Maulana Zidane, saya dari Fakultas Teknologi Informasi, Prodi Sistem Informasi. Saya ingin bertanya kepada Profesor If. Pertanyaannya, seperti yang kita tahu saat ini kehadiran smartphone membuat banyak orang saat ini, terutama generasi muda, menjadi malas membaca buku. Padahal banyak manfaat yang dapat kita peroleh dengan membaca buku, salah satunya itu dapat memperkuat daya ingat kita. Tapi faktanya generasi muda saat ini malah lebih banyak menghabiskan waktunya untuk bermain sosial media di handphone dibandingkan membaca buku. Jadi yang menjadi pertanyaan saya, apakah dengan perkembangan teknologi tersebut dapat berpengaruh terhadap perkembangan terjadinya demensia, dan bagaimana cara terbaik kita sebagai generasi muda untuk menyikapi hal tersebut agar dapat terhindar dari demensia? Itu saja, terima kasih.
Okay, very good question. Mas Raffi, okay, Rafli, okay. This is a roughly question for Prof. If. Okay, as we know that a young generation take time more, spend time to look their gadget, okay, and they don't like to read the book more, okay. And as we know that it has impact on the brain function and brain development, and how to overcome the problem, and what the strategy for young generation to cope with it. Okay, maybe like that. Okay, thank you.
That is a really good question. We see it every day in the class where the students have great difficulty in not being with their phone. And actually, we did a very mean experiment where we took the phones away and measured the stress levels of the students. And it was really high, and they became really anxious and really sad. They can't leave, you know, the idea of not having their phone was very detrimental to their mental health. Now, one of the important elements, and it's a big area of discussion, so it's a very good question, is how bad or how good is it? Now, can social interaction be replaced by a phone? Now, one of the things we've consistently found is that people who are lonely, and lots of young people actually in the UK are lonely, between 20 and 24, 40% of the UK girls say they are very often lonely. That's almost half of the girls, compared to only 10 to 20% of the older people. So this is really shocking. And what is that loneliness about? And if I see the young people on campus, they're on their phones. So they sit together, 5 of them, and all sit on their phones, telling their other friends what a great time they are having. But we know that, and Prof. Barry will say this as well, for humans, proximity to other humans is very important. And it is how we are constantly processing information. So if I talk to Prof. Barry, I smell him, I sense his gut microbiome. I take over his gut microbiome in proximity just by sitting next to him and giving the lecture. And so this is very important for our gut health. And by looking at him, I'm scanning his eyes, I'm keeping my brain active. If I'm just a phone is a very static thing. It doesn't allow us to pick up the smells, the other aspects of social interaction. So it depends also a little bit on, does the phone take over the social interaction? So a lot of young people, I say, they don't know anymore how to socially interact. For instance, if I speak to Prof. Barry, I can only look at him at one point for a couple of seconds. Then he becomes uneasy. He goes, oh my goodness, why are you looking at me like this? It's a normal thing. If I want to stress Prof. Barry out, I'm going to stare at him and he'll be, you know, it's threatening. Now, if you're on your phone, you don't have this because you're not even looking at your phone. And so these very subtle social interactions, I find after COVID, half of my students had real problems coming to university and really interacting with others. They found it very threatening. They found it very scary. They got very depressed. Many had to go back home because they were so anxious and stressed out by actual human interactions, the smells, the sounds, the subtleties, and not knowing what to do with this. And as Prof. Barry said, we are social creatures. We need other people. And I think because we do a lot of work with technology, you know, also to help the older people, especially with dementia, but it cannot really take the place. First of all, the older people often, like myself, I don't even know, you know, my daughter, I have to ask, how do I do this on my phone? You know, I don't know how to work with technology as well. That's one. But the other one is the milk of human kindness. Just having somebody there, it's okay. It's okay. The touch, the hug is so important. As Prof. Barry will tell you, the oxytocin and the reduction of the stress hormone just by the human interactions. It's very, very important. So yeah, we can learn a lot. We can find a lot of information, but there's a downside to it. Like I used to sit in the library and go through these things called books. And I used to smell the paper and I would find things by accident. You know, I'd be like, oh my goodness, I wasn't looking for. So I was always forced to just look at books. And it gave me many, many insights I wouldn't have had if I would have used Google Scholar, because that directs me to one part. So there's parts to both of it. It's an excellent question. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Prof. Barry want to add explanation?
What Professor Eve has just said is, I can't really add anything to it, but I'll just give you an example. Since you asked about reading a book versus a book you hold in your hand versus reading from a computer, to get a book, you have to do something, go to a library or go to a bookstore, and that's social in itself. There are other people, but also there are other books in the bookstore and other books in the library. And I have had tremendous luck. I go to the library or a bookstore for one book that I want, but I see another book that in fact is better than the one I wanted. So real books still have a place in our life. And I encourage you to go to the library.
Okay. Please make applause for Prof. Eve and Prof. Barry. Maybe, okay. Oh, Bu Yeni. Iya.
Thank you very much, Prof. Eve and Prof. Barry Bogin. Thank you for your very interesting presentation. We know that there are many developing countries with growth and development problems, and including stunting, which is also associated with brain development. How can children with growth delay and grow and develop properly? Thank you.
Well, I think Prof. Barry can probably say more about this from a biological point of view. And I'd like him to say something about love, the importance of love. But from my point of view, I think it's very important that the children receive adequate nutrition. Of course, we can see that that's very important for growth. a safe environment, but also an environment, and I think this is one of the things we see in your studies with the Maya, is that when they moved to America from Guatemala and they had more food, they grew taller, but they also became more obese. And so this is what we don't want. It's very dangerous. So the children have to keep on exercising. And as Prof. Berry showed us, he saw that all the children were doing really was eating. They weren't doing much else. They didn't have many other hobbies. And I think with an increased focus, I see it a lot in East Asia on getting good education and studying all the time. I don't have time for exercise. I don't have time to play. It's a very bad development because actually we see a lot of young people now with diabetes, which is very bad for brain function. So children, not only do they have to eat healthy, it has to be nutritious, not just junk food, but also exercising is very important. So as a children, it's not just about the stunting, but it's one we improve the growth, that we don't improve the girth. So
Yeah, stunting is an issue in many lower middle income countries. I do work in Guatemala, which has the highest prevalence of stunting in the world. So I'm aware of that, and much of my research has been with problems in physical growth. However, stunting is a symptom of problems. Stunting itself is not the problem. And the normal range of variation in human height is more than 20 centimeters. So perfectly healthy people can be short or tall. Professor Eve comes from the country that technically is on average the tallest, the Netherlands. And adult Maya women in Guatemala are, according to the data, the shortest in the world. Yet, just being short or being very tall does not mean you're healthy or unhealthy. And this has been shown by my colleagues here in Indonesia, working with the Indonesian Pediatric Society. And Professor Aman Bulugan, if I get the name right, they measured children in Timor and Bali and some other places. And we published, I helped analyze the data. We published an article in European Journal of Clinical Nutrition showing that even the stunted children in Timor still had enough reserves on their body, measuring arm skin folds, arm circumference, fatness and muscle on the body. They were very short, but the Indonesian pediatricians could not find any clinical signs of problems, and cognitive or physical. So just being stunted does not automatically mean there's a problem. Stunting is a technical definition of statistical definition, less than 2 standard deviations below the World Health Organization reference. And some people are just that, but they're healthy. However, stunting usually is a sign of problems of the community, of the family, and the larger national environment. So in my previous talk a few days ago, I spoke about the importance of love and hope. And love for me is not romantic love. It's the love of society that gives opportunities to everybody. So children will grow better physically and mentally when they have opportunities, as Professor Eve said, for good education, for good physical activity, for good nutrition. It's a total package. And with those opportunities comes a hope for the future that I can become better. The students, you wouldn't be here at the university if you didn't have a hope that the education will lead to something better in your life. But too many people in the world do not have that hope because of inequalities that lead to economic poverty and environmental poverty, and just the, all the opportunities that I had, and probably most of you had, to think about a good future. So stunting represents the lack of that kind of social, societal love and societal opportunities to move ahead. So that's why it's important. So stunting is important, but just feeding the children to make them bigger or fatter is not the answer. You have to give them all the social, economic opportunities as well.
Okay, thank you, Prof. We have a question from the participant from Zoom platform, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Eve and Prof. Berry for wonderful sharing. This is Miss Susiana Nugraha. I have a question addressed to both of you. Aging process has affected many grandparents suffered from physical capacity declines. Nowadays, we face the fact that many grandparents are having mandatory talks to look after their grandchildren. Yes. And some policymakers willingly to empower the grandparent taking role on stunting prevention, as they are responsible to looking after their grandchildren. I would like to know your opinion on this situation, considering the functional capacity declines in grandparents. And please share your opinion on this situation, Prof. Please, Prof. Okay, first.
I think it is a big problem, actually, if people are mandatory put in charge of the grandchildren, because some older people cannot or do not want to take care of their grandchildren. And it's interesting that in Europe, a lot of women from the generation of my mom, who was 89 when she died, who went through the second feminist wave and had jobs and had been responsible, did not necessarily want to take care of the grandchildren. They didn't mind having fun with the grandchildren, but then they were very happy to give them back to go home. So I think it needs to always be enjoyment. It shouldn't be an economic necessity. We should provide adequate and good childcare. Also for the socialization, I think if people feel it's put upon them, that is not a good situation. If my mother, for instance, at one point was quite frail, so she also it wasn't safe to leave her with a young child running around, and it wasn't safe for the child or the grandmother. So I think we need to assess that on a case-by-case basis, and older people they might look old, but they're still people who need to be treated with dignity, with respect, and their wishes need to be respected. So if they don't want to take care of the grandchildren or cannot, we need to provide alternatives for that. And I think the government needs to do this. It's also good for the children. Many studies have shown that community activities are really good for children, for socialization early on. They do a lot more rough and tumble play, a lot of creative play. Just sitting watching television with grandmother who cannot walk is not a good idea, I think. So it needs to be a balance. Thank you, Dr. Susiana. That's a great question. Thank you. Did you want to add, Barry? Yeah?
There are other questions.
Okay. Okay, and there is another question. Yeah. Okay, Prof. Berry Bogin. I would like to thank for the incredible presentation from both speaker and Congress for Orindo for the successful international webinar. I'd like to ask for both speaker, for Prof. Eve, can emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning enhance our ability to identify subtle patterns and interaction among various risk factors for dementia? And how do we ensure the transparency and interpretability to these advanced models? And for Prof. Berry, what methodological advancements are required to bridge the gap between self-reported accounts of childhood experiences and the objective biological marker of aging, considering the potential unreliability of memory recall and the complex nature of translating physiological experiences into biological outcomes. Can I please, Prof. Berry first?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yes, thank you for that question. Very, very good question. Better, the questions are better than my answers, probably. I don't know what artificial intelligence might do in the future. I don't think most of us know what it might do. So I can't even comment on that. However, certainly technology has a very big place because part of what makes us human is technology. I like to think there's three equal important parts to being human: technology, sociology, and ideology. So we cannot survive without our technology. And that goes back to, Homo erectus here in Java with stone tools and fire. And artificial intelligence is it's a new kind of fire. And then, of course, our social groups, we must live in social groups, as Prof. Yves was saying, and have all that love and hope, as I was just saying. And then we must have an ideology. And ideology are the rules of how we behave. Like our meeting here today and all of the introductions and thank yous, everything that we do with each other, that's part of our ideology. Ideology is much more than a religion. Every human group has religion. Every human group has rules for appropriate behavior. And artificial intelligence is not social. It's just a technology. It's not social, and it doesn't have an ideology. Only the programmers, the people, have those things. So I don't think artificial intelligence will take over because it's not human. And then on the more specific question about biological markers of aging and asking people when they're old to talk about their childhood, yes, that's a big problem. It's not that people lie, it's that we create our memories from a complex set of experiences and feelings. So of course, if I were to tell you what happened to me as a child, I would not remember it the same way as other people, or my mother would remember. Yet it's very clear that people who report more adverse childhood experiences, specialists call it adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. If you report more of them as an older person, you are in usually worse condition. So even if it's not true, but if you think that if you suffered as an infant or a child or an adolescent, you seem to be worse off biologically and cognitively as an adult. So we know that objectively, when I as a researcher can see the adverse events in a child's life, that does correlate with poor physical growth in height, risk for obesity, and risk for behavioral and school problems later on. So I don't want to throw out memories. There's some correlation, but we have to be careful about how we treat memories from older people. Probably Professor Yves knows more about that.
That is actually such an interesting point about if we recall memories, they are modified every time we recall them. So they're incredibly unreliable. So if I recall them when I'm sad, that memory will be tainted. And if, for instance, somebody who asks you the questions leads these questions and makes you feel worse, your memory will get worse. So there is that. But at the same time, there's been very important work by somebody called Levi showing that people who reported poor health, whether that was related to adverse events or not, they also were much worse off, even if their health wasn't objectively worse to start with. Now, what explains that is something called physical self-efficacy, And it is our ability to think that we can change our lives. So very much what Professor Barry talked about, the hope and the resilience that even if bad stuff happens to us, that it's a challenge, we can overcome this. So we perceive this as something we can do something about. And that's the same for health. If you think that, for instance, I always give this example of my neighbor who was not very educated, and he was smoking, and he said to me, "Eve, you know something about dementia, right?" And I said, "Yeah, something." And he said, "Well, both my parents had dementia. What can I do to stop it?" And I said, "Well, you can stop smoking. That will halve your risk." And he said, "Well, if you would believe that, you wouldn't have a life." So he was not, he didn't believe that his actions could affect his health. And of course, risk doesn't always translate to the individual, but you can reduce the risk. So that's one. The other one is with artificial intelligence, and I agree with Prof. Barry, and it relates to the question about the phones. But we use technology a lot, and we use it for different things. So we found in Oxford that diagnosing dementia, even by the most experienced and best neurologists, wasn't great. They didn't agree with each other often. They weren't very specific. And so we programmed all the dementia criteria in a computer, and we forced the choice. So we said, is this there? Is this there? Yes, no. And we made decision trees. And we found that when you look at the brain, which is when dementia diagnosis is confirmed, that system much improved the accuracy, even when a medical student did it. The accuracy was very good. So AI can help improve diagnostic accuracy. And then we used artificial neural networks already 15 years ago. Now everybody's doing it, but 15 years ago we did it. And we looked at risk and protective factors in huge databases. Why did we do this? The artificial neural network work like a brain. So they look at interactions, and the system tries to find the best pathway to predict dementia or not dementia. And it shows up the nodes, which are most important. So one of them was homocysteine. Homocysteine, very important driver. Why? Well, it's very neurotoxic in brain, and we can decrease it very easily with folate. So eating green leafy vegetables, oranges, will decrease the risk. So it seemed that that was massive risk factor, and indeed eating folate can really decrease the risk. But giving folate doesn't actually, unless you're deficient, doesn't do that much. Got to be quite deficient. The problem with homocysteine, it is also correlated with smoking, with being obese, with sexual gender, with sex steroids. So it is what we call the umbrella variable. So sometimes the system picks up stuff statistically, but actually they are related to other factors. So I think, yes, it can have a role, but also we found that training the artificial neural networks did not translate even within the same data set in predictive value. It is because there's too much variability. So there's a role, absolutely, it can aid us, but as Prof. Barry said, we have to be very mindful in how we program it, because we are in charge. It's not, you hear stories about AI is taking over and blah, blah. And of course, very often in the UK, you call somebody and they say, sorry, computer says no. So you ask for something and says the computer says no. But we should always be able to override as humans the artificial technology. We need to use our common sense. It can be a useful tool, but we need humans, I think, to make the decisions ultimately. So I hope that answers the question. Very long.
That's a very good and comprehensive answer. Okay, this is one question again from Fitrianto. Okay. The question is, diterjemahkan. Is there any action or maybe strategy to prevent or to reduce the risk of getting dementia in the early age, okay, especially when people come to 50 years old, okay?
Maybe like that, Prof. Eve and Prof. Berry, maybe from Mas or Mbak ya, ini Mas kayaknya ya. Mas Fitrianto, is there any solution or is there any action strategy to reduce or to prevent dementia in the early age, especially in 50 years old? Okay, thank you.
I think in the talk we talked particularly in that time, as Prof. Berry said, women go through the menopause, and a lot of women will notice temporary memory and concentration problems. The brain needs time to reset. Eating tempeh, like Dr. Atwick showed, can really help with that, also help with the sleep, because if we lose sleep, it's very bad for our brain. And we want to eat all the time because the leptin gets upset. So we also grow very big if we're not careful. So for women in particular, because they also have an increased risk for dementia, they need to make sure that around the menopause, around age 50, they keep exercising. Now, normally they stop. Why? Because your joints start hurting with the loss of the estrogens. Your balance is affected and you're not sleeping, so you're tired. But it's important to keep on pushing yourself, go for that walk, because it will make you feel better. And it improves your brain health later in life. It brings down the blood pressure, it brings down the bad cholesterol, it brings down the obesity. So in midlife, we need to affect those factors. Check your blood pressure, check your cholesterol, check your blood glucose, because we often don't know that we're at risk, but in midlife, that's when it matters to bring it down. If you're smoking, stop smoking then, and then the negative effects will go down as we're aging. So particularly the age of 50 is very important. Last call, last orders, it's an hour never. That's when you've got to pay attention. When you're young, you can do a lot of things to your body, and there is a lot of regenerative capacity. We have a lot of antioxidants in our body, and we take care of it. When we're old, we don't. Not so much anymore. So to exercise, have good nutrition, we can keep that system in as good a state as long as possible.
Prof. Berry, you want to add some explanation maybe, or some answer?
Just to summarize what our guru, Professor Eve Hogevors, the guru says your past determines your future. So be very careful what you do in your past.
Okay.
So, of course, it's too late by the time you're 50 to change what you've done.
Yeah.
But it's never, ever too late. No matter what age, you can stop doing bad things and start doing good things. And it always helps. So there's no magic solution, no silver bullet to kill the vampire of dementia, but you can just do the best and eat many things, but everything in moderation. So all that advice that my grandmother would give me.
Oke, saya coba terjemahkan Mas Fitrianto tadi beberapa upaya yang bisa dilakukan, khususnya ini untuk perempuan, apalagi sudah masuk masa menopause. Tadi ya bisa controlling atau memonitoring selalu tekanan darahnya supaya bisa menjamin kolesterol, gula darah semuanya dalam kondisi aman. Lalu setelah itu juga perhatikan juga asupan makanan. Salah satunya tadi kalau dari Prof. If bilang tempe. I think it is the reason why Miss Tribudi like tempe so much. Jadi kenapa makan tempe salah satunya karena tadi ada daidzen atau senyawa aktifnya. Lalu setelah itu juga do physical exercise regularly atau lakukan aktivitas fisik secara reguler supaya bisa mencegah ataupun menurunkan resiko untuk mendapatkan atau terkena demensia lebih awal. Kurang lebih seperti itu. Dan tadi dari tambahan dari Prof. Berry, karena sudah masa lampau ada satu habit yang mungkin kurang baik, ya kita nggak bisa mengubah masa lalu, tapi setidaknya kita mengubah saat ini bagaimana mulai menerapkan habit yang baik. Karena tadi ya, it's not a magic, kita nggak serta-merta kayak sulap. Nah, hari ini kita bilang begini, hari besok akan lebih baik lagi. Mungkin seperti itu, Mas Fitrianto untuk jawabannya.
Thanks for the question. Please give applause for our presenters. But as a moderator, can I ask just one question for Prof. Berry and Prof. Eve? Uh, First, for Prof. Berry, I have read your article, Prof. Childhood, Adolescent, and Longevity, a multi-level model of the evolution of reserve capacity in human life history. Oh, wow. It's amazing because you compare among orangutan, gorilla, chimpanzee, and human about the average adult lifespan, age maturity, age at winning, and independence care. But the biggest question for me, does the parenting style give influence to independency, or maybe when the babies or the child must be win by the parents? This has influence, and how about the influence? Which the negative and which the positive? It's the first question for you, Prof. And the second question for Prof. Eve. I'm very interested in tempe consumption because I am a dietitian. So, wow, tempe. How many portion or how many grams of tempe that consumed by the participant, so they can have, tempe can have impact on cognitive impairment, maybe improve the cognitive ability or like that. And why? Because when in your presentation, you said that tofu can have negative impact for cognitive. Okay. Yes. Okay. Is there any harmful substance in tofu in your study? So elderly is more recommended to consume tempeh than tofu. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much for reading my papers and for the very good question. About the question was about parenting style. Yes, that's a very exciting area of research. It's not exactly my area directly, but of course there are many child developmental psychologists and sociologists and anthropologists who've studied this. One of the anthropologists who's influenced me talks about the universal, the human universal desires of parents for children, and what all parents want is their children to grow up healthy and eventually become independent and productive adults. So, like some Professor Ethan was saying, eventually you want those children to go away and let me, I want my children to go away, let me rest. And the same as with grandchildren. And that I think is what all parents around the world really try to do, and what parenting styles try to do. But of course, there are many, many problems. And that's the parts that other people do, the problems when there are problems when feeding children. So babies who do not breastfeed well, or children who do not eat well, very big areas of concern clinically and in research. There's no simple solution for those kinds of things. But as long as parents are always doing what I just said are the universals, making sure their children are healthy and making sure they're growing towards independence, meaning the ability to take care of themselves. None of us takes care of ourselves completely. We always depend on other people, whether it's school systems or family or medical systems. But the ability to make good decisions in our lives, then a variety of parenting styles do allow for that, so that no one society has the right way. That's really all I can say.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful question. So, first of all, the effect of the tofu, we only saw when people were much older and ate it very, very frequently, so a couple of times a day. And this is also what we found in a Chinese cohort in Shanghai. So always only in the older ones, so not in middle age. It's actually quite beneficial for women to eat tofu. And we also found it in Japanese American people living in Hawaii. Again, you know, and there's been some other studies in the US in Japanese people that middle age, yes, but if you eat it for longer and too much, it's not so good. There are many possible explanations for that. One is the possible negative effect it has on the thyroid. Thyroid disease is quite common in older people, and some people found that tofu can accelerate this. That could be one of the reasons. We need to look more into this. When we looked at it in Japanese American people, we didn't find it explained, the association, but it could be because we found the biggest effect in Jogja, where in Borobudur, and this is where Prof. Tony at the time said that thyroid disease was endemic. So because there's very little iodine in the soil, a lot of older people had hypothyroidism. We found in the UK that half of the people with overt clinical thyroid disease do not, so in terms of the lab values, have no signs or no awareness, but they do have worse memory and they have a faster cognitive decline. So it is really a risk factor, and medical people should always look at it to check the thyroid status. But again, many people have not found that tofu had a negative effect. It could be because they're not using the right test to pick it up. It could be because it is related to other nutritional factors. But what we did find is that tempeh consistently benefited older people, especially in Indonesia, both middle-aged as well as older. And Dr. Atik can answer this better, but from the data from the rodents, we found that humans should eat about 75 grams, right? I think for 100 grams, yeah. But that's quite a lot to eat, especially for the UK people. So the people in Indonesia could probably eat it. But a lot of the UK people got stomach problems and they weren't used to this. Plus, they probably don't convert in their gut. They don't have the bacteria to convert the phytoestrogen, the plant estrogen, into equal, which is very potent. So it worked very well in the Indonesian people. It worked in the UK people, but not quite as well. But Prof. Handayani has shown that it also worked in Indonesian people with dementia in her studies. So tempeh seems to be very beneficial. It could be because of the fermentation. You have folate, cobalamin, vitamin B12. You have many other antioxidants. And it creates a very good, the probiotic goes away, the bacteria go away when you process, but the prebiotic, the fibers, are very good for the bacteria. So that's probably the main effect. And I think also the main effect of eating fruit, because we found that buah is also protective. And I think it's not because people think I just eat a vitamin pill, but it doesn't work. The vitamin pills don't protect against dementia at all. I think it's the fibers in the fruit, and we see it in gorillas and chimps, they eat fibers. They're always eating branches and leaves. Fibers are very important for the gut, and what's important for the gut, I said what's important for the heart is for the brain, but also what's important for the gut, perhaps even more, because it stimulates our immune function, it helps with the neurotransmission, etc. So yeah, I hope it answered your question.
Thank you, Prof. E. Prof. Berry. Okay, please give applause again.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the final section, and I'm going to summarize the main point that our speakers have been presenting. Okay. We can prevent dementia from early age, especially from young. Okay. As we heard before, that when child we can fulfill the nutrition requirement for preventing stunting or maybe wasting and also obesity. And we can practice or do the parenting style better. And of course, in the middle age, we can control or monitoring blood pressure, and also we can control blood cholesterol and blood glucose level, and it can have a good combination to prevent or to reduce the dementia risk of people. Okay, maybe that's the summarize of our general lecture today. Thank you so much again, Prof. Eve and Prof. Berry, for your interesting and valuable presentation. Okay, also thank you for to our excellency guests, delegate and participant for your energy and active participation. I am Desti as moderator. I give the time back to Miss Tia as a master ceremony, and thank you. Okay, Prof. Tribudi will tell about the picture.
Saya tak buka ya. Are you happy with this? I have one question. So the one who can answer correctly, I give you the present. Ini maksudnya apa? Ini apa artinya? Bahasa Indonesia boleh. I speak in Indonesian, okay? Apa artinya? Maksudnya apa? Boleh bukan hanya mahasiswa, dosen boleh, wakil rektor boleh. Ini apa maksudnya? Satu, oke. Ya, satu ya. Lumayan. Ada lagi? Ada lagi? Kenapa kok dia kok girang begitu ya? Apa artinya? Bahagia di kampus C. Oke. Apa lagi? Nah, ini bahagia karena fotonya terpampang. Sebelum foto terpampang, kenapa dia tiba-tiba jongkok? James Bond. Oke. Ya. Oke, semua betul, semua betul. Dari mahasiswa, kalau dihubungkan dengan lectures yang luar biasa tadi, apa ini artinya? Beliau adalah katakanlah ya, belum sampai lansia, late middle age, dan Prof. Berry adalah salah satu dari older people, young older people. Tapi kok seperti itu? Gimana? Ada enggak yang bisa menyampaikan apa arti ekspresi ini? Kamu bisa.
Baik, terima kasih Prof. Saya bahasa Indonesia saja. Jadi di sini suatu ekspresi bahwa kita mempunyai dua narasumber yang sangat hebat, di mana mereka bisa mempromosikan dari general rector tersebut, seperti itu, Prof. Itu yang saya tangkap dari sini. Kemudian Prof. Berry juga cukup semangat bahwa dia walaupun belum dikatakan usia lanjut, tapi tetap semangat. Oh sudah, terima kasih Prof. Itu yang bisa saya sampaikan. Terima kasih.
The two points, yeah, I think all the answers are correct. Yeah, first thing, that we are happy to have you to come here, okay? And then also some of them mentioned that this is, knowing and showing the people that we go internationalization, and we have done. So big applause to all of you, to all of them, and we are grateful with your willingness to support us, to always give us very, very meaningful and I think is quite high standard. I'm proud and a bit sombong kyopo. Sorry, I always feeling like this, that I'm really lucky. We are really lucky to have you. If compared, I don't know, with other institutions. Why? Because we are quite confident. Sometimes we too confident. It's okay to confident. Okay. This is my points from the discussion. Thank you. Starting with internationalization, and I hope that we continue our development to be internationalized. Why? Because in Urindo, our vision is being entrepreneur and entrepreneurial, it's friendly and recognized internationally. Thank you. And the second, I would like to express our gratitude, and I'm really proud of you, the moderator. We have the moderator knowledgeable and also knowledgeable and friendly and everything. And then you can summarize all the questions very nicely. I also appreciate, I'm not saying that before, that the question is very, very good. Very high standard also question. It means that our students have been very nice. Even you in Indonesian, but it's good. I also give you a present. Don't worry. And then finally, our professors. They don't come here not sharing the knowledge, but they come here with the heart. This morning, both of us also mentioned that we don't have money. We don't get money for the funding agencies anymore, up to now. But why they come? They support by themselves. They support by themselves. Pick up luck. And of course, my also sincere gratitude to all the community, academic community from Urindo, Unrio, and Status Respati. Thank you so much for collaboration. You know why I show this. What do you think about the right, the upright? Tadi bilangnya James Bond. Yeah. How old are you? 70? 70 years old. Yeah. We are the same age, right? But still, what's jongkok? Squatting. They're squatting. Like this. Yeah. He jumped from the car. He was very, very happy to see the photos. Yeah, the backdrop. Oh, this is the first time in my life. And directly squatting, jongkok. Will you jongkok in front? I want to compare with Oh, oh, okay. Dah, ternyata our other people also squatting nicely. And the second, that's the second, they are very proud because as part of our community, they feel that they are honored. That's why both of them, like this, stand up in front of the banner. And the last, Prof. Very Hogerford, I hope, because he's very proud of this, and I hope that the lectures today not lasting, not will be lasting. What is our homework? Our homework is, jangan dikira cuma lihat-lihat ya, ada homework. It means that we have to take all these to improve our curriculum. So our curriculum in general should be developed with all these materials. Also the materials that have been provided in the 24 and also the one from the community services. Prof. I would like to ask you, or maybe your suggestion. I am really impressed on the frame of active aging. And nowadays, we tend to improve the active aging to wealthy aging. All the discussion this morning, I think it's 100. It's always have been 100. But I suggest something that we are in Indonesia, very rich with the various kind of local values. For example, yesterday we discussed with the older people in Bali. I'm really amazed because the seniors still dancing. This is my suggestion that the framework should be improved or developed with what is the meaning of culture and also seni itu apa? Art and dancing. When I discussed with them, I realized even with dancing, they got something that's spirituality. Why? Because they are grateful as an older people. How about the intellectuality? They got. Because for dancing, they have to think what is the meaning, what is the arrangement of between, for example, gamelan itu apa? Music, and also something that they create. What is the meaning of this dancing? Social engagement is very, very important, and they are happy with this dancing. It means that we have 3 dimensions. And also physically, because like squatting, they do. I cannot do it. Yeah, they do. Dancing with squatting, everything. It means that physically. And how about vocationally? Vocationally, they are proud to be the older people who still have something that share with the other ones. Because everybody give applause after for example, dancing. And they are also proud, they are also happy because they still have something, what is self-esteem or something. They are proud, they are still do like this. And the last is by environment. The support of environment is not only physically, but also the support from the government, from the association, and also the environment. Very nice thing. So I mean that your frame, I hope, that can be developed involving all kind of variables, and not just active aging, but active and wealthy aging. My question to you, why you can do like that? No. It means that, as you mentioned about reserve capacity, I only, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. The reverse capacity stay dominated with physically, a bit socially. My opinion, my question is the one that you mentioned in the webinar, international webinar about hope and love, also can be one variable in the frame, or maybe the concept of reserve capacity. So, who will answer? You or you too. Yeah, you first.
Hello. Yes. Can hope and love be good not only for children, but also for older people? Is that what you're saying? And yes, well, of course, it's all connected. The hope and love that help infants and children grow helps them build that reserve capacity, which we must have in order to be healthier and wealthy when we're older. Now, of course, there is individual variation. I'm lucky that I have a grandmother who lived to 98 and a mother who's 93. And so there's probably some genetic, and I had nothing to do with that. You know?
Okay, thank you.
But we need it all our lives. We need hope and love all our lives.
Yeah. So I give you a present. We go to Malaysia.
Yeah.
Very beautiful island to improve your research capacity.
Thank you so much for your observations. As always, I learn so much from you. But because I think with dancing, it's something we see in all the cultures, we used to see in all the cultures, but unfortunately, we've lost it in many modern societies. But even in the 50s, in modern societies, older people would still very often go ballroom dancing, learning new techniques. And we found it is very important for the social interaction, for the fun, and so on, because it's a great exercise. But unfortunately, as Prof. Barry said, he's been squatting all his life. He's been preparing his future. And so now, and Prof, I'm sure as well, you know, if you have not exercised in your life, to go and do squatting is very, very painful and potentially dangerous because you might fall. The same with dancing. So we tried dancing for middle-aged people, and it was good. Gentle dancing, learning how to dance. But actually, the other exercises were better for the brain. But when we tried it with people with dementia, they couldn't do it. It was too dangerous because you want to challenge the brain. You can do it seated. It's okay. Like you can do the seated dancing. But when we tried it in the laboratory, especially with technology, so they had to look at the screen and listen to the music and do the steps, it was too much. So people would lose their balance and fall. So we didn't for the people with dementia, but there is a very beautiful video on YouTube of a very old ballerina. She was the first ballerina, and she developed dementia. And she's very old and very frail, and she's sitting in a chair, not responding. And then they played a swan lake, the music of the swan lake. and she goes.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Showing the video of how she was dancing, and her body remembers it, and she becomes like spiritual. She's so happy because she's back in that period. So dancing can be very important. Also when people have dementia, but we have to be more careful. You can't just say go do rock and roll or go do squatting like a Russian dancer, because that would make people lose their balance. Unless, of course, they have like Prof. Berry prepared for his future.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Kupapos, and also Prof. Berry Bogin. I think this is enough. And I asked to the committee, is there, do you have the contact numbers of all the participants? No, I mean, WA-nya ada nggak? Or email? Yeah. So I promise that I would like to give you present. The present is buku ajar gerontologi. So it means that all of you, not only the one that raising the question, but all of you will get buku gerontologi. This is a gerontology book. One thing that we have to improve and to improve and also to develop is how the artificial intelligence should be part of this book. But not today, because after discussion that we have still have to improve and also to conduct some research on it. Again, thank you so much that we will follow up this general lecture to improve our curriculum based on all your materials, not only today, but also the one when in the communities service and also the one in the webinar. And secondly, please continue working with us and support us, and also giving us more and more your contribution to our young generation, because I realize that I'm old, but we have very high quality young generation. Give applause to our young generation. Thank you to the Master of Ceremony, Mas Ichi, Mas Ceni, and others. Thank you, the student and all the not seniors, but the lecturers who are here in this room and also by Zoom platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Tribudi. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, before we end the program, I would like to take a moment to express our deep appreciation for our esteemed lecture today. Their insightful words and expertise have truly made a lasting impact on all of us. As a token of gratitude, we would like to present them with a small gift. And I invite Prof. Eve and Prof. Berry to come forward to receive this token of appreciation, and I will invite Prof. Tribudi to give the appreciation gift. Ada namanya. Okay, please join me in applauding their exceptional contribution again. Kemarin minta juga sih, Prof. Tapi ya oke, baik-baik.
Satu lagi.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay, for Miss Desti. Just,
Kak Yenis. Prof. Ferry, you sebentar kemudian yes. Mbak Desi mana tadi yang Mbak Desi? Saya ambilin. Ini mana? Mbak Yeni ngasih ke Mbak Desi. Sama-sama Undrio dulu. Satu, dua, tiga. Satu lagi, satu, dua, tiga. We don't say everybody because you have got one back.
Okay, all participants, we take photo first, and
Sit down here, and ya, duduk apa?
boleh duduk, Prof. Boleh duduk, Prof. Nanti. Okay, please move forward.
Ya, ada bisa ada yang kita senasib ya. Ya, masih ikut. Maksudnya, jangan contoh mentang-mentang bisa contoh. Nggak kelihatan, Pak. Satu, dua, tiga. Gaya tangan, kepala. Satu, dua. Oke, pakai ini.
Yuk, Prof, boleh bersama Respati, Prof. Bersama Respati. Satu, tiga gitu. Satu, dua, tiga. Dua, tiga. Okay, what an interesting lecture today. Thank you very much to all lecturers and all participants. And once again, on behalf of the organizing committee, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the lecturers, participants, and supporters who have made this event possible. Thank you once again for being a part of this remarkable event. Goodbye.